A single touch. That's all it took to destroy everything. When CEO Victoria Lane's fingers brushed against Ethan Cole's tie in that 40th floor hallway, neither of them knew the cameras were watching. Neither of them understood that one innocent gesture would ignite whispers, headlines, and a dangerous contract that would blur the line between performance and truth. A powerful woman, a struggling single father, a fake romance that felt too real. This is the story of what happens when survival meets desire, when pride collides with need, and when two people must decide, is love worth losing everything? Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights of Sterling Global's 40th floor hummed with the same lifeless frequency they had for the past 6 years. Ethan Cole had learned to disappear beneath them. He moved through the administrative corridors like a shadow, head down, steps quiet, existing in the negative space between the important people. The executives who made millions, the directors who shaped policy, the assistants who whispered their secrets. Ethan wasn't any of those. He was furniture, wallpaper, a man who filed reports, updated spreadsheets, and left at exactly 5:47 p.m. every single day because daycare closed at 6:15 and Ms. Patricia charged $5 for every minute he was late. Nobody noticed Ethan Cole. That was exactly how he needed it. This particular Tuesday started like all the others. Ethan's alarm screamed at 5:30 a.m. He rolled out of the creaking bed in their 2-bedroom apartment in Riverside, the kind of building where the heating worked 3 months out of 12 and the neighbors' arguments bled through walls thin as hope. Leo was still asleep, one small arm thrown over his dinosaur pillow, mouth slightly open. 8 years old. The entire reason Ethan's heart still beat. Ethan showered in 4 minutes flat, a skill honed over years of single parenthood. He made Leo's lunch with mechanical precision. Turkey sandwich, apple slices, the granola bar Leo actually liked, not the chalky ones from the discount store. He laid out Leo's school clothes. He checked homework. He signed a permission slip for a field trip to the Science Museum that cost $20 they didn't really have. By 6:45, they were on the number 12 bus. Leo pressed his face against the window, fogging the glass with his breath and drawing dinosaurs in the condensation. Ethan held their backpacks and watched the city wake up. Joggers and expensive sneakers, coffee shops that charged $7 for drinks that were mostly foam, Tesla sedans sliding through intersections like sharks. "Dad?" Leo's voice was small. "Yeah, buddy? Can I do soccer this spring?" Ethan's chest tightened. Soccer meant cleats, shin guards, registration fees. Saturday mornings he'd have to navigate somehow around his new weekend shift. "We'll see," Ethan said, which was parent code for probably not, but I don't want to break your heart on a Tuesday morning. Leo nodded. He understood. He was 8, but he understood too much. Ethan dropped him at Riverside Elementary at 7:20, watched him disappear through the double doors with his patched backpack, then caught the express bus downtown. By 8:15, he was at his desk on Sterling Global's 40th floor, logging in, pulling up reports, becoming invisible again. The morning crawled. Emails, spreadsheets. A system update that crashed twice. Ethan ate lunch at his desk, leftover pasta from Sunday that had seen better days, and avoided the break room where the real employees gathered to talk about their weekends in wine country and their debates over Tesla versus Rivian. At 2:30 p.m., his phone buzzed. Leo's school. His stomach dropped. "Mr. Cole? This is Nurse Henderson. Leo's fine, but he's complaining of a stomachache. Can you—" "I'll be there in 30 minutes. He hung up. Stared at his screen. He had 17 reports due by end of day. His supervisor, Margaret Chen, had already emailed twice about timelines. Leaving meant staying late. Staying late meant missing pickup. Missing pickup meant Fei Yong he couldn't afford, and Ms. Patricia's disappointed face. Ethan grabbed his jacket. He was halfway to the elevator, mind racing through logistics, bus routes, timing, whether Leo was actually sick or just anxious about the math test tomorrow, when he collided with something solid. Not something. Someone. "I'm so sorry. I wasn't—" Ethan started, stepping back, already apologizing, already shrinking. Then he looked up. Victoria Lane stood exactly 2 feet in front of him, one hand braced against the wall where she'd caught herself, the other holding a tablet that had clattered to the floor. She was taller than he'd imagined. Everyone looked smaller in the company newsletters and earnings calls, with dark hair pulled into a razor-sharp bun and eyes the color of cold steel. She wore a suit that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly rent, charcoal gray with lines so precise they could cut glass. She was the CEO of Sterling Global. Ethan was a level 3 administrative assistant. The galaxy between them had never felt wider. Mr. She glanced at his badge. Cole, you all right? Yes, I'm sorry. I wasn't watching where... Your tie's crooked. Ethan blinked. What? Victoria bent down, retrieved her tablet with one fluid motion, then straightened. She took one step closer, then another. Close enough that Ethan could smell her perfume, something expensive and faintly dangerous, like leather and smoke. Then she reached out. Her fingers brushed the knot of his tie, a thrift store navy blue he'd owned for 4 years, and straightened it with the casual confidence of someone accustomed to fixing the world's problems. The touch lasted maybe 3 seconds. Her fingertips grazed his collar. Her knuckles brushed his shirt. Ethan forgot how to breathe. It wasn't attraction. It wasn't romance. It was sheer electric shock. When was the last time someone had touched him? Really touched him? Not Leo's sticky-fingered hugs or the accidental brush of strangers on the bus, but an intentional, human gesture that acknowledged he existed? His breath came short and sharp. Victoria's eyes flicked up to his face, one eyebrow arched. Her expression shifted from professional neutrality to something almost amused. "Why are you breathing like that?" she asked. The question hung in the air between them like smoke. Behind her, the elevator doors stood open, waiting. Beyond that, the glass walls of the 40th floor reflected everything, including the security camera mounted in the corner, its red light blinking steadily. Ethan's face burned. I have to go. My son's school called." He stepped around her, moving fast, not running, but close to it. He felt her eyes on his back the whole way to the elevator. When he finally stepped inside and jabbed the button for the lobby, he caught his reflection in the polished doors. His tie was perfectly straight. His hands were shaking. Leo didn't have a stomachache. He had anxiety about the math test, just as Ethan suspected, and 20 minutes of sitting with Nurse Henderson while eating crackers had solved it. Ethan stayed with him anyway, signed him out early, and they went to the library where Leo did homework, and Ethan answered work emails on his phone, trying not to calculate how many hours he'd have to make up. They took the bus home, made spaghetti. Leo talked about a girl named Emma who could do a backflip and a boy named Marcus who'd brought a tarantula for show and tell. Normal things, safe things. Ethan barely heard any of it. He kept feeling those fingers on his collar, kept hearing that question. Why are you breathing like that? It meant nothing. A CEO had straightened a crooked tie, a moment of fastidiousness from someone who probably color-coded her entire life. It was nothing. So why couldn't Ethan stop thinking about it? After Leo fell asleep, Ethan sat at their kitchen table, a wobbly, second-hand thing he'd reinforced with duct tape, and opened his laptop. He had reports to finish, timesheets to submit, a life to maintain. Instead, he found himself searching. Victoria Lane Sterling Global. The results flooded in. Forbes profiles. Business Insider features. A TED Talk on sustainable leadership that had 8 million views. Victoria Lane had built Sterling Global from a mid-tier consulting firm into a multinational corporation worth $4.2 billion. She'd been named one of Fortune's most powerful women 3 years running. She collected modern art, sat on the boards of 2 museums, and had once fired an entire executive team in a single afternoon for ethics violations. She was brilliant, ruthless, untouchable, and she'd straightened Ethan's tie like it mattered. He closed the laptop. This was stupid. He was a 34-year-old single father, barely keeping his head above water. She was a CEO who probably didn't remember his name. The universe didn't work this way. People like Victoria Lane didn't notice people like Ethan Cole, except she had. Wednesday morning arrived with rain hammering the windows and Leo complaining about wearing his raincoat. Ethan got him to school, got himself downtown, and slid into his desk at 8:17, soaked and exhausted. By 9 a.m., he knew something was wrong. People were staring. Not obviously, not rudely, but Ethan had spent 6 years being invisible, and he knew what normal looked like. This wasn't it. Sandra from accounting glanced at him, then quickly away. Two guys from finance huddled near the coffee maker, whispering. When Ethan walked past, they went silent. At 9:30, his phone buzzed. A text from Jamie Ortiz, one of the few people at Sterling who'd ever been decent to him. Jamie. Dude, have you seen it? Ethan. Seen what? Jamie. Check your email. Company newsletter. Ethan's stomach twisted. He opened his work email. The Sterling Global Internal Newsletter sat at the top, sent at 8 a.m. by Communications. Subject line, a moment of leadership. He clicked. The photo loaded slowly because the building's Wi-Fi was garbage, but when it appeared, Ethan's entire world tilted. It was him. Victoria. The hallway. Yesterday afternoon. The angle was from the side, slightly above, from the security camera. The photo was high resolution, almost artistic. Victoria's hand at his collar, adjusting his tie, her expression focused. Ethan's face visible in profile, eyes wide, lips slightly parted. The caption read, CEO Victoria Lane exemplifies Sterling's commitment to mentorship and excellence at every level. Even the smallest gestures reflect our values. Ethan read it 3 times. Then 4. Mentorship? Smallest gestures? This wasn't mentorship. This was a woman straightening a crooked tie because she was meticulous and he'd literally run into her. This was a 3-second interaction that meant nothing. But the photo didn't look like nothing. The photo looked intimate, personal, like a scene from a movie where the powerful executive notices the overlooked employee and the music swells and everything changes. Ethan's phone buzzed again. Jamie. Bro, people are talking. Ethan. It was nothing. I bumped into her. She fixed my tie. That's it. Jamie. That's not what it looks like. Jamie. That's not what anyone thinks it looks like. Ethan pushed back from his desk. His hands were shaking again, but this time not from shock, from anger, from fear. This was a spotlight he'd spent 6 years avoiding. This was attention he couldn't afford. He grabbed his phone and headed for the stairs, needing air, needing space, needing... Ethan Cole? He froze. Turned. A woman in a pristine black suit stood 5 feet away. Mid-30s, strawberry blonde hair, the kind of posture that screamed executive assistant to someone terrifying. Ms. Lane would like to see you, she said. Immediately. The 50th floor was a different world. Where the 40th floor was beige cubicles and fluorescent hum, the 50th was glass and steel and silence. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. The furniture looked like sculpture. Even the air felt expensive. Ethan followed the assistant, her badge read Caroline Watts, executive assistant, through corridors where their footsteps echoed. Employees moved with hushed efficiency. Everything was controlled, pristine, perfect. Caroline stopped outside a set of double doors, frosted glass with Victoria Lane etched in simple letters. She's expecting you, Caroline said. Her expression gave away nothing. Ethan's mouth was dry. What does she want? You'll have to ask her that. Caroline knocked once, then opened the door. Victoria's office was the size of Ethan's entire apartment. Windows wrapped 2 walls, flooding the space with gray morning light. A desk made of dark wood and chrome sat near the windows, clean except for a laptop and a single coffee cup. Modern art decorated the walls, bold slashes of color that probably cost more than Leo's college fund would ever be. Victoria stood at the window, her back to the door, silhouette sharp against the rainy cityscape. Mr. Cole? She said without turning around. Close the door. Ethan did. His heart hammered. Victoria turned. She wore another immaculate suit, midnight blue this time, and her expression was unreadable. She gestured to one of the chairs facing her desk. Sit. Ethan sat. The chair was leather, probably Italian, designed for executives who made decisions worth millions. He felt like a kid called to the principal's office. Victoria moved to her desk but didn't sit. She stood, arms crossed, studying him with those steel gray eyes. "I assume you've seen the newsletter," she said. "Yes? And I assume you understand the implications." Ethan's voice cracked. He cleared his throat. "It was nothing. I bumped into you. You straightened my tie, that's all." "I'm aware of what happened, Mr. Cole. I was there." Her tone was dry. "But perception matters more than truth in buildings like this. I didn't ask for, neither did I." Victoria picked up her coffee cup, took a sip, set it down with precision. "But here we are. By noon, that photo will be on 6 different office gossip threads. By tomorrow, it'll be speculated about in industry blogs. By next week, someone will have crafted a narrative that serves their purposes, not ours." "What do you want me to do?" Ethan asked. I can send an email, clarify that it was nothing, that I'm just—" "Nobody," Victoria finished. Her expression didn't change. "You were going to say you're nobody, weren't you?" Ethan's face burned. "That's not—" "It's exactly what you were going to say." She moved around the desk, closer, and Ethan fought the urge to stand, to step back, to run. "Ethan Cole, Level 3 Administrative Assistant, 6 years at Sterling, no promotions, no disciplinary actions, no presence whatsoever. You're the definition of invisible." Each word landed like a punch, because it was true, all of it. "Which," Victoria continued, "makes you perfect." Ethan blinked. Perfect for what? Victoria sat on the edge of her desk, an oddly casual gesture that somehow made her more intimidating, not less. "How much do you know about my personal life, Mr. Cole?" "Nothing," Ethan said honestly. I don't follow that stuff." "Smart man?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Here's what you need to know. I'm 38 years old. I've built Sterling Global into a $4 billion company. I sit on 8 boards. I have a 60-hour work week and a reputation for being brilliant, demanding, and utterly unavailable." She paused. "The board thinks that's a problem." Ethan frowned. "Why?" "Because powerful single women make people uncomfortable. We're threatening, unnatural. There must be something wrong with us if we're not balancing a marriage and 2.5 children alongside our empires." Her voice dripped sarcasm. "So they've spent the last year suggesting I need to soften my image, be more relatable, show that I have a personal life." "That's insane," Ethan said before he could stop himself. Victoria's smile sharpened. "Yes, but it's reality, and yesterday you handed me an opportunity." Ethan's stomach dropped. "What kind of opportunity?" Victoria stood, walked to the window, looked out at the rain-soaked city. "That photo," she said, "tells a story. A powerful woman. An overlooked employee. A moment of personal attention that humanizes me and elevates you. It's already sparking conversation, interest, curiosity." She turned back to him. "I want to use it." The words hung in the air like a threat. "Use it how?" Ethan asked, though he already knew, already felt the trap closing. "I need someone to date publicly for the next 6 months, Victoria said, voice calm and businesslike, like she was negotiating a contract, which, Ethan realized with growing horror, she was. Someone respectable but unthreatening. Someone with a compelling personal story. Someone who looks good in photos but won't actually interfere with my life. "You want me to pretend to date you?" "Yes." "That's crazy. It's strategic. It's a lie. It's business." Victoria moved back to her desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a folder. She set it on the desk between them. "This is a contract, 6 months. Public appearances, company events, charity galas, perhaps 2 dinners per month at carefully selected restaurants. We'll be photographed. We'll look like a couple. You'll be compensated generously." Ethan stared at the folder like it might bite him. "How generously?" $10,000 per month. $60,000 total. The number hit like a physical blow, $60,000. That was more than Ethan made in a year. That was Leo's school, soccer, a better apartment, a safety net he'd never had. "Why me?" Ethan asked, voice rough. "You could hire an actor, a model, someone who actually knows how to do this." "Because actors and models come with their own publicity, their own angles, their own ambitions. Victoria's eyes locked on his. You, Mr. Cole, have none of those things. You're exactly what you appear to be. A single father trying to survive. That's the story. That's what makes it believable. Ethan's hands clenched. And what happens after 6 months? We have a quiet, amicable breakup. You receive a glowing recommendation and a transfer to a different department with a significant raise. Your life improves. My image softens. Everyone wins. Except it's built on a lie. So is most of business. Victoria's expression didn't waver. I'm not asking you to fall in love with me, Mr. Cole. I'm offering you a job, a role to play, a way to provide a better life for your son. There it was, the knife between his ribs. She'd done her research. She knew about Leo. I need to think about it, Ethan said. You have until tomorrow morning. Victoria opened the folder revealing the first page of the contract. Legal language, clauses, non-disclosure agreements. This doesn't leave this room. You don't discuss it with anyone. If you decline, the conversation never happened. Ethan stood. His legs felt unsteady. And if I accept? Then we start rehearsing. Victoria extended her hand. Think carefully, Mr. Cole. Opportunities like this don't come twice. Ethan didn't shake her hand. He turned and walked to the door, feeling her eyes on his back. Mr. Cole? He paused, hand on the doorknob. Your tie's crooked again, Victoria said. Ethan didn't look back. He opened the door and walked out, leaving the contract behind, leaving the impossible offer behind, leaving everything behind except the question that followed him all the way down to the 40th floor. What kind of man sells his dignity for $60,000? And the answer, the one that burned in his chest as he returned to his desk and tried to focus on spreadsheets. The kind who'd do anything for his son. That night, Leo wanted to play dinosaurs. Ethan sat on their threadbare living room carpet, making roaring sounds while Leo narrated an epic battle between T-Rex and Triceratops. The apartment was cold. The radiator clanked. Somewhere above them, the neighbors were fighting again. Leo crashed the dinosaurs together, giggling. Dad, you're not doing the voice right. Sorry, buddy. I'm tired. You're always tired. Ethan looked at his son. Skinny arms, too long hair that needed a cut, eyes bright with imagination despite everything. Despite the shabby apartment and the secondhand clothes and the fact that Ethan had to say, we'll see, instead of yes to soccer and field trips and everything else 8-year-olds deserved. Leo? Ethan said carefully. What if things could be different? Leo looked up, dinosaurs forgotten. Different how? What if we could afford things, better things? Leo's face went carefully neutral. The face of a kid who'd learned not to hope too hard. Like what? Like a nicer place. And soccer. And maybe we could get you a new backpack, one without the broken zipper. Would we have to move? Maybe. Eventually. Leo thought about this, turning a plastic stegosaurus over in his hands. Would I have to change schools? I don't know yet. Because I like my school. Emma's there. And Mr. Harrison is nice. I know, buddy. Leo nodded slowly. If we stay at my school, then okay. Different would be okay. Such a small thing to ask. Such a reasonable condition. Don't take away the few stable things in his life. Ethan pulled Leo into a hug, feeling the small body fold against him, trusting and warm. I love you, Ethan said. Love you too, Dad. After Leo fell asleep, Ethan sat at the kitchen table and opened the photo from the newsletter on his phone, studied it, the way Victoria's hand rested at his collar, the way his face looked, vulnerable, exposed, shocked, the way it looked exactly like something it wasn't. He thought about $60,000. He thought about Leo's face when Ethan said, "We'll see," to things other kids got without asking. He thought about the weight of 6 years of invisibility and what it would mean to step into the light, even if the light was artificial, manufactured, a spotlight built on lies. He thought about what kind of man he wanted to be. Then he thought about what kind of father he needed to be. At 11 p.m., Ethan opened his laptop and composed an email to Victoria Lane's executive assistant. Ms. Watts, please inform Ms. Lane that I accept her offer. I'm available to discuss details at her convenience. Ethan Cole. He read it 3 times. His finger hovered over the send button. This is insane, part of him whispered. This is wrong. This is selling yourself. This is survival, another part answered. This is giving Leo a chance. Ethan closed his eyes, took a breath, sent the email. The reply came in 4 minutes. Mr. Cole, Ms. Lane will see you tomorrow at 7 a.m., 50th floor. Come prepared to work. Caroline Watts. Ethan shut the laptop, sat in the dark kitchen while the radiator clanked and the city hummed beyond their thin walls. He'd just agreed to pretend to date one of the most powerful women in the city, to lie to everyone, to perform a relationship for money while keeping his real life, his son, his struggles, his truth, hidden behind a manufactured smile. In 6 months, it would be over. He'd have money, security, a better life for Leo. All he had to do was forget who he was for a while. All he had to do was become someone else. Ethan looked at the framed photo on the kitchen counter, him and Leo at the zoo last summer, both of them laughing, cotton candy stained and happy, in a rare moment of pure joy. I'm sorry, he whispered to the photo, to Leo, to himself. Then he went to bed and didn't sleep at all. Because tomorrow, Ethan Cole would stop being invisible. And he had no idea who he'd become instead. 7 a.m. came too fast and felt like walking into an execution. Ethan stood outside Victoria's office, wearing the same navy tie she'd straightened 2 days ago, wondering if that was stupid or strategic. His shirt was pressed. He'd done it himself at 5:30 that morning while Leo still slept, burning his thumb on the iron because his hands wouldn't stop shaking. The suit was his only one, purchased 4 years ago for a job interview that hadn't panned out, slightly tight in the shoulders now, but passable. He'd told Leo he had an early meeting. Not a lie, technically. Just not the whole truth. The whole truth was that Ethan was about to sell something he couldn't get back, and he wasn't sure if that something was his dignity or his soul. Caroline Watts appeared exactly at 7, her timing so precise Ethan suspected she'd been waiting around the corner with a stopwatch. Mr. Cole, right on time. She gave him a clinical once-over, the way a scientist might examine a specimen. Follow me. The office looked different in morning light, less intimidating somehow, or maybe Ethan was just too exhausted to feel proper fear. Victoria stood at her desk, pouring coffee from a French press that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly grocery budget. She wore charcoal gray today, hair pulled back in that same severe bun, and when she glanced up at him, her expression was completely neutral. Coffee? She offered. Yes, please. She poured a second cup, handed it to him. The mug was warm. The coffee smelled expensive, dark, and complex. Nothing like the break room sludge Ethan usually choked down. Sit, Victoria said. Ethan sat, sipped the coffee. It was perfect, which somehow made everything worse. Victoria settled into her chair, opened a tablet, and swiped through something. Before we begin, I need absolute clarity. You've read the contract? I skimmed it last night. Her eyes flicked up. Skimmed? I'm not a lawyer. Half of it didn't make sense. Then let me simplify. Victoria set down the tablet. For the next 6 months, you will attend public functions with me as my romantic partner. We will be photographed together. We will appear in media coverage. You will be affectionate but not inappropriate, respectful but not distant. The goal is to present a relationship that looks genuine to outside observers, while actually being completely fake. While being a professional arrangement, yes. She didn't flinch from the word. In exchange, you receive $10,000 per month, paid in increments. At the conclusion of the 6 months, you receive a transfer to a senior administrative position in our Denver office, higher pay, better benefits, and far enough away that our breakup will seem natural. Denver, Ethan repeated. That's across the country. That's the point. Clean break. No lingering questions. What if I don't want to move to Denver? Then we negotiate a different position. But distance is advisable. Victoria leaned forward. Mr. Cole, this arrangement only works if it has a believable ending. 2 people who work in the same building don't just drift apart. One of us needs to relocate. Ethan's stomach churned. And it can't be you. I'm the CEO. I'm not going anywhere. Of course not. In this equation, Ethan was the variable, the one who could be moved, adjusted, disappeared when convenient. What about Leo? Ethan asked. My son. Does he know about this? That's your decision. The contract requires discretion, but doesn't dictate how you manage your personal life. So I'm supposed to lie to an 8-year-old about why I'm suddenly dating my boss. Victoria's expression flickered, something almost like discomfort. You're supposed to do what parents do. Protect him and provide for him. If that requires some creative explanation of your work responsibilities, I trust you'll find appropriate language. Creative explanation. Like that made it better. Ethan set down his coffee cup. When does this start? Tonight. Tonight. There's a charity gala, art museum fundraiser, black tie, 500 guests, extensive media coverage. Victoria pulled up something on her tablet, turned it so Ethan could see, a glossy invitation with embossed gold lettering. I already RSVP'd with a +1, that's you. Ethan's throat went dry. I don't have a tuxedo. Caroline will handle that. She'll take your measurements this morning and have something delivered to your apartment by 4 p.m. I can't afford. This is a work expense. Everything related to public appearances is covered. Victoria's tone was matter-of-fact, like she was discussing office supplies. The tuxedo, the dry cleaning, the car service, all of it. You won't spend a dime of your own money. Except his self-respect, Ethan thought, but didn't say. Victoria stood, moved to the window, looked out at the city waking up. I know what you're thinking, Mr. Cole, that this is beneath you, that you're selling out, that good men don't take money for pretending to feel something they don't. Ethan said nothing, because she was right. But let me tell you what I see, Victoria continued, still facing the window. I see a man who's been invisible for 6 years because being noticed is dangerous when you're barely surviving. I see someone who makes his son's lunch every morning and takes 2 buses to drop him at school because you can't afford a car. I see exhaustion. I see pride that's eating you alive because you can't give your child the life he deserves. Each word landed like a scalpel, precise and cutting. And I see an opportunity, Victoria said, turning back to face him. Not just for me, for you, to take one risk, one uncomfortable, imperfect compromise, and change everything. 6 months of discomfort in exchange for years of security. That's not selling out. That's survival. Ethan met her eyes. And what do you get out of this? Really? Victoria smiled, cold and sharp. I get the board off my back. I get to keep building my company without being told I need to be more balanced or relatable. I get 6 months of positive press showing that I'm human enough to care about someone, which apparently matters more than the 4,000 jobs I've created or the $1 billion in revenue I've generated. That's dystopian. That's reality. Victoria moved back to her desk, picked up a pen, clicked it once. So, are you in, or are we done here? The question hung between them. Outside, the city hummed. Inside, the clock on Victoria's wall ticked steadily forward, each second a choice. Ethan thought about Leo's face when he'd asked about soccer, thought about their apartment with its broken heating and thin walls, thought about 6 more years of invisibility, of we'll see, of watching his son learn not to want things because wanting hurt too much. I'm in, Ethan said. Ethan, but I have conditions. Victoria's eyebrow arched. Conditions? Leo doesn't move schools. Whatever happens in 6 months, Denver or wherever else, he stays at Riverside Elementary until the end of the academic year. He's already had enough disruption in his life. Victoria considered this. Agreed. What else? I need flexibility for school emergencies. If Leo's sick or there's a problem, I go, no matter what event we're supposed to be at. Within reason, yes. Anything else? Ethan took a breath. I need to know we're not doing anything that would hurt him. No photos of Leo, no stories about him. He's not part of this. Something shifted in Victoria's expression. Not quite softness, but something adjacent. Understanding, maybe. I would never exploit a child for publicity, she said quietly. You have my word. Leo stays completely out of this arrangement. Ethan nodded. His hands were shaking again. He pressed them flat against his thighs. Then yes, I'm in. Victoria extended her hand across the desk. Welcome to the performance, Mr. Cole. This time, Ethan shook it. Her grip was firm, professional, exactly what he expected. But her hand was warm, and for just a second he felt the same electric shock he'd felt when she'd touched his tie. Then she released him, and the moment was gone. Caroline will get you fitted, Victoria said, already back to business. Be ready at 7 tonight. Car service will pick you up. Don't be late. Ethan stood. What do I do at this thing? What do I say? Stay close to me. Look interested when I talk. Smile when appropriate. Touch my arm occasionally. Nothing aggressive, just enough to suggest comfort and familiarity. She paused. Have you ever been to an event like this before? No. Then tonight is your crash course. Watch, learn. Don't drink too much. Don't talk about work. You're there because we're together, not because of Sterling. If someone asks how we met, tell them the truth. We literally ran into each other. That's not much of a story. Victoria's smile was razor thin. The best lies are built on truth, Mr. Cole. People believe what they can see. And what they saw was that photo. Us in a hallway, my hand at your collar, your face looking like I'd just rewired your entire world. She tilted her head. All you have to do is let them think that moment meant more than it did. Ethan felt heat crawl up his neck. And what did it mean? It meant your tie was crooked. Victoria turned back to her computer, dismissing him. 7 p.m., don't forget. Ethan left the office, rode the elevator down to 40, and somehow made it to his desk before his legs gave out. He sat there staring at his screen, not seeing anything. He'd just agreed to fake date his CEO for $60,000. He'd just signed away 6 months of his life to a performance he didn't know how to give. He'd just chosen money over truth, security over integrity, survival over pride. And the worst part, the part that made his stomach twist, was that he'd do it again. He'd make the same choice every time, because loving Leo meant protecting him, and protection cost money he didn't have. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Caroline. I'll be at your desk in 10 minutes for measurements. Please be available. 10 minutes. Barely enough time to breathe. Ethan closed his eyes, counted to 10, and tried to remember who he'd been 3 days ago, before a crooked tie had changed everything. He couldn't quite picture it anymore. Shetsam. Caroline arrived with the tailor, an older man named Marco, who spoke little but measured everything twice with the precision of a surgeon. They did it right there at Ethan's desk, ignoring the stares from coworkers who definitely noticed the CEO's assistant measuring some random admin guy for formal wear. Arms up, Marco said. Ethan raised his arms. Tape measure wrapped around his chest, his waist, his shoulders. Inseam. Ethan stood very still while Marco measured his legs, deeply aware of Sandra from accounting watching from 2 desks over. The whole thing took 8 minutes. Marco made notes on a small pad, nodded to Caroline, and disappeared. The tuxedo will be at your residence by 4, Caroline said. Shoes, shirt, cufflinks, the complete ensemble. A car will arrive at 6:45. Don't be late. She left before Ethan could respond. He sat back down. His computer had gone to screen sleep. When he moved the mouse, 17 new emails waited, all routine, all requiring the kind of focus he absolutely didn't have. Jamie appeared at the cubicle wall. Dude, what was that about? Work thing, Ethan said. Work thing? Caroline Watts doesn't measure people for work things. She barely acknowledges us mortals exist. Jamie leaned closer. This is about that photo, isn't it? The tie thing? It's nothing. It's clearly something. Everyone's talking about it. Let them talk. Jamie studied him. You okay, man? You look like you're about to pass out. I'm fine. Ethan forced himself to focus on the screen. Just have a lot going on. Yeah, I bet. Jamie lingered a moment longer, then clapped him on the shoulder. Hey, whatever this is, don't let them screw you over. People at the top, they're good at that. Ethan nodded, not trusting his voice. Jamie left. Ethan stared at his emails and tried to work, but the words blurred together. All he could think about was tonight, a room full of wealthy strangers, cameras. Victoria's hand on his arm, his hand on her waist, both of them pretending to be something they weren't. His phone buzzed. Leo's school. His heart jumped. "Mr. Cole, this is Ms. Patterson from the office. Nothing's wrong, but Leo forgot his lunchbox. Is it possible for you to, I'll be there in 30 minutes. He grabbed the lunchbox from his bag. Leo had been distracted this morning, worried about a spelling test, and headed for the elevator. This time, he didn't run into anyone. The hallway was empty. The security camera's red light blinked steadily in the corner. Ethan looked directly at it, wondered who was watching now. The tuxedo arrived at 4:07 p.m. in a garment bag nicer than any piece of clothing Ethan had ever owned. He unzipped it slowly, half expecting it to be a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. The tuxedo was perfect. Classic black, single button, sharp lines that looked like they could cut through steel. The shirt was crisp white cotton with French cuffs. The bow tie was silk. The shoes were leather, polished to a mirror shine. Everything fit perfectly. Ethan stood in his shabby bedroom wearing a tuxedo that cost more than 3 months of his rent and barely recognized his reflection. "Dad?" Leo appeared in the doorway, eyes wide. "Whoa! Why are you fancy?" Ethan turned. "I have a work event tonight, a fancy one." "You look like James Bond." "I look like I'm playing dress-up." "No, you look cool." Leo came closer, touched the sleeve. "Can I come?" Ethan's chest tightened. "Not this time, buddy. It's grown-up stuff. Boring." "Oh." Leo's face fell. "Who's watching me?" "Mrs. Chen from downstairs, remember her? She said you could help her make dumplings." Leo brightened slightly. Mrs. Chen was kind and patient and let Leo stand on a stool to help in the kitchen. "Okay, but you have to tell me about it tomorrow." "Deal." Leo paused. "Dad, are you in trouble?" Ethan knelt down, eye level with his son. "No, buddy, I'm not in trouble. Why would you think that?" "Because you look worried, and you've been on your phone a lot, and you made me pancakes yesterday, even though it wasn't the weekend." Too observant. Leo had always been too observant. "I'm not in trouble," Ethan said carefully. "Work's just been different lately. Good different. There might be some changes coming. Good changes." "Like what?" "Like maybe we can afford soccer, and maybe a nicer place to live eventually." Leo's eyes went cautious hopeful again. "Really?" "Really. But it means I might have to work some extra events for a while. Nights like tonight. Fancy stuff. Is that okay?" Leo thought about it, then nodded. "If it means soccer, then yeah." Ethan pulled him into a hug, breathing in the scent of his son's shampoo. Discount brand, but it smelled like home. "Love you, buddy." "Love you too. Don't get dumpling sauce on the fancy suit." Ethan laughed despite everything. "I won't." At 6:42 p.m., a black town car pulled up in front of their building. Ethan kissed Leo goodbye, gave final instructions to Mrs. Chen, and walked out into the evening feeling like he was headed to his own funeral. The driver opened the door without a word. Ethan slid into leather seats that probably cost more than his monthly salary. The car smelled like expensive cologne and money. They drove through the city as rush hour faded into night. Ethan watched people on sidewalks, hurrying home, grabbing dinner, living normal lives. He'd been one of them 48 hours ago. Now he was in a town car, wearing a borrowed tuxedo, on his way to pretend to be someone's boyfriend for money. The car pulled up to the museum, a massive stone building with columns and steps and lights that made it glow like a palace. People in formal wear climbed the steps in clusters, laughing, comfortable, belonging. Ethan didn't belong here. The driver opened his door. "Ms. Lane is waiting inside, sir." "Sir?" When was the last time anyone had called Ethan sir? He climbed out, straightened his bow tie, took one breath, then another. Then he climbed the steps and walked into a world he'd only ever seen in movies. The museum's main hall was transformed. Crystal chandeliers threw golden light across marble floors. Waiters in white jackets circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres that were probably meant to be eaten in one bite, but looked too pretty to touch. Women wore gowns that cost more than cars. Men wore tuxedos with the casual confidence of people who owned several. Ethan stood frozen just inside the entrance, scanning the crowd. There you are? He turned. Victoria appeared at his elbow like she'd materialized from air. She wore a floor-length gown in deep emerald green, sleeveless, elegant, with her dark hair swept up to expose her neck and shoulders. She looked like power dressed in silk. You clean up well, she said, giving him a quick assessment. The tuxedo fits. Thanks. You look... Ethan's brain stalled. What did you say to your fake girlfriend who was actually your boss? Nice. Her mouth quirked. Nice? I mean, good. Great. You look great. Relax, Mr. Cole. You're allowed to compliment me. She took his arm, her hand resting lightly in the crook of his elbow. Now smile. We're being watched. Ethan smiled. It felt like rigor mortis. Victoria guided him into the crowd, moving with the ease of someone who'd attended 1,000 events like this. People gravitated toward her. Board members, donors, executives from other companies. She introduced Ethan each time. This is Ethan Cole. Just that. No explanation, no context, just his name, delivered with the implication that he mattered. People shook his hand, asked polite questions. Where did he work? Sterling Global. What did he do? Administrative operations, vague enough to mean nothing. How did he and Victoria meet? That one made Ethan's pulse spike every time. We ran into each other, Victoria said smoothly. Literally. Ethan wasn't watching where he was going, I wasn't either, and somehow we ended up talking. She glanced at him, and something in her expression shifted. Warmer, softer, completely artificial. Best collision of my life. The way she said it, people believed her. They smiled, they nodded. They looked at Ethan with new interest, like maybe he was more than he appeared. It was terrifying how good she was at this. They moved through the gallery, past abstract paintings and sculptures that probably had deep meaning Ethan didn't understand. Victoria's hand stayed on his arm, light but constant. Occasionally she'd lean close and murmur something. That's Senator Crawford, avoid him. Or, the woman in red is donor relations, be polite. And Ethan would nod like he understood the game. A photographer appeared, camera raised. Ms. Lane, can we get a photo? Victoria turned, pulling Ethan with her. Of course. She moved into position naturally, one hand still on his arm, the other resting lightly at her side. Ethan stood there like a statue until he felt her fingers press gently against his elbow. Relax, the pressure seemed to say. Breathe. He tried. Put his arm around her waist, carefully, the way he'd seen men do in photographs. She fit against his side perfectly, like they'd done this 1,000 times. The photographer snapped several shots. Beautiful couple, the photographer said. Ethan's face burned. Victoria just smiled. They moved on. More introductions, more careful conversations. Ethan's cheeks hurt from smiling. His feet hurt from standing. He grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing waiter just to have something to do with his hands. Sip it, Victoria murmured. Don't gulp. Ethan sipped. It tasted expensive and made him feel like an imposter. Victoria Lane, fancy seeing you here. The voice came from behind them, smooth and faintly mocking. Victoria's hand tightened on Ethan's arm, just for a second, but he felt it. They turned. A man approached, mid-40s, silver-haired, wearing a tuxedo that screamed custom-tailored wealth. His smile was sharp. Marcus, Victoria said evenly, how unexpected. I could say the same about your date. Marcus's eyes slid to Ethan, assessing. I don't believe we've met. Marcus Hendricks, Hendricks Capital. Ethan shook his hand. Marcus's grip was aggressive, the squeeze of someone who needed to prove dominance. Ethan Cole. And what do you do, Ethan? I work at Sterling. In what capacity? The question was a trap. Ethan felt it, even if he couldn't articulate why. Operations, he said vaguely. Marcus smiled wider. Operations. How charmingly modest. He turned back to Victoria. I heard an interesting rumor. Something about Sterling looking into sustainable energy acquisitions. Rumors aren't facts, Marcus. You know that. Of course. But they're often rooted in truth. Marcus sipped his drink. If Sterling were pursuing such acquisitions, hypothetically, Hendricks would be very interested in partnering. We have infrastructure that could... This is a charity event, not a negotiation, Victoria cut in, voice pleasant but steel underneath. If you want to discuss business, call Caroline and schedule a meeting. Marcus's smile didn't waver. Of course. Enjoy your evening. His eyes flicked to Ethan one more time. Both of you. He walked away. Victoria's grip on Ethan's arm loosened. Who was that? Ethan asked quietly. Marcus Hendricks. Billionaire, venture capitalist, professional vulture. Victoria's jaw was tight. He's been trying to get Sterling to partner with him for 3 years. I've declined every time. Why? Because he's sloppy, aggressive, and he doesn't respect boundaries. She glanced at Ethan. The fact that he's here tonight asking about acquisitions means someone leaked information they shouldn't have. I'll deal with it tomorrow. Ethan heard the edge in her voice. Anger, tightly controlled. Are you okay? He asked. Victoria blinked, like the question surprised her. Yes? Why? You seem tense. I'm always tense at these things. It's performance, just like what you're doing. She adjusted her grip on his arm, gentler now. Come on. One more round of schmoozing and we can escape. They circulated for another 30 minutes. More introductions. More careful smiles. Ethan's performance improved slightly. He learned to laugh at jokes he didn't understand, to nod at conversations about market trends and portfolio diversification that meant nothing to him. He learned to stand close to Victoria without touching her inappropriately, to project warmth without overstepping. He learned to lie with his body language. Finally, Victoria murmured, We're leaving. Say goodbye to no one. We just slip out. They made their way toward the exit. Ethan felt eyes tracking them, curious, speculative, probably already crafting narratives about the CEO and her mysterious date. Outside, the night air was cool and clean. Ethan breathed it in like a drowning man surfacing. The town car waited. They slid into the back seat and the door closed, sealing them in leather-scented silence. For a long moment, neither spoke. The car pulled away from the museum, merging into traffic. You did well, Victoria said finally. Better than I expected. I felt like a trained monkey. That's what these events are. Trained monkeys in expensive clothes. She kicked off her heels, grimacing slightly. The trick is looking like you enjoy it. Ethan loosened his bow tie. How do you do this all the time? Practice, and a deep well of resentment that I channel into productivity. She glanced at him. You're wondering if it's always this fake. Yes. Victoria smiled, tired and genuine for the first time all night. It is. Every handshake, every smile, every conversation about market trends that people pretend to care about. All of it's performance. The difference is that most people have been doing it so long they've forgotten their acting. That's depressing. That's business. She looked out the window. But you did well tonight, Ethan. You held your own. Nobody questioned you. Nobody made you uncomfortable. Except Marcus. Marcus makes everyone uncomfortable. That's his strategy. Victoria's expression hardened. Don't worry about him. He's irrelevant. The car stopped in front of Ethan's building. The driver opened the door. Same car will pick you up Sunday at 6, Victoria said. Dinner at Arcadia. Just the two of us. But there will be photographers. Wear the navy suit. It'll be less formal. Okay. Ethan hesitated. Victoria? She looked at him. Thank you. For tonight. For the tuxedo and the car and all of it. Something flickered in her expression. You're thanking me for making you perform in a charade. I'm thanking you for helping me take care of my son. Victoria held his gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded, just slightly. Get some rest, Ethan. You earned it. Ethan climbed out. The car pulled away, taillights disappearing into the night. He stood on the sidewalk in front of his building, still wearing the expensive tuxedo, and felt the weight of everything settle onto his shoulders. This was his life now. Performance. Pretense. Careful lies dressed up as romance. And he had 23 more weeks to go. Ethan climbed the stairs to his apartment, where Leo was already asleep, and Mrs. Chen waited with a kind smile. He paid her $20 he couldn't afford, thanked her, and locked the door behind her. Then he stood in his bedroom, took off the tuxedo piece by piece, and hung it carefully in his closet next to his regular work clothes. 2 worlds, 2 versions of himself. He didn't know which one was real anymore. The next 3 weeks became a rhythm Ethan both learned and resented. Monday through Friday, he was invisible again. Desk 40, spreadsheets, the familiar hum of fluorescent obscurity. But Thursday nights and Sunday evenings belonged to Victoria. Restaurant dinners where they sat across candlelit tables making conversation that looked intimate from the outside. Gallery openings where her hand rested in the crook of his elbow. A theater premiere where photographers shouted their names and Ethan smiled until his face ached. The money appeared in his account like clockwork. $10,000 on the first of the month, minus taxes. Ethan stared at the balance, feeling equal parts relief and revulsion. He paid 2 months ahead on rent, registered Leo for spring soccer, bought groceries without checking prices. Small luxuries that felt enormous. New sneakers for Leo, a winter coat that wasn't secondhand, dinner from somewhere other than the dollar menu. Leo noticed but didn't ask many questions. He was 8, and 8-year-olds accepted that sometimes dads had extra work that meant new backpacks, and yes, instead of we'll see. Mrs. Chen watched him on event nights, and Leo seemed happy making dumplings and learning Mandarin phrases, unaware that his father was slowly disappearing into someone else. The fourth Thursday, Ethan made a mistake. They were at Meridian, a restaurant so expensive the menu didn't list prices. Victoria wore black, always black or gray or navy. Power colors, she called them. Ethan had learned to wear his suits with confidence he didn't feel, to order wine he couldn't pronounce, to laugh at appropriate moments during conversations about art installations and fiscal quarters. They were halfway through the main course when Victoria's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and Ethan saw her expression shift, just slightly, a tightening around her eyes. "Excuse me," she murmured, setting down her fork with precise control. "I need to take this." She stepped away from the table, phone pressed to her ear, moving toward the restaurant's entrance. Ethan watched her through the window, saw the rigid set of her shoulders, the sharp gestures she made with her free hand. Whatever the call was, it wasn't good news. She returned 5 minutes later, composed but brittle. "Everything okay?" Ethan asked. "Fine." She picked up her wine glass, took a long sip. "Just work." "You sure? You look—" "I said it's fine, Ethan." Her voice was sharp enough to cut. Ethan retreated. They finished the meal in near silence, making only enough conversation to maintain appearances for the other diners and the photographer he'd spotted lingering near the entrance. When the car dropped Ethan at his building that night, Victoria barely said goodbye. The next morning, he found out why. The headline hit Bloomberg at 9 a.m. Sterling Global CFO resigns amid accounting irregularities investigation. Ethan read the article 3 times at his desk, each pass making his stomach sink lower. Sterling's chief financial officer, a man named Robert Chen, who Ethan had maybe seen twice in 6 years, had resigned effective immediately. The board had launched an internal investigation into potential accounting discrepancies in the Asia-Pacific division. Stock prices had dropped 4% in pre-market trading. By noon, the office was chaos. Executives held emergency meetings behind closed doors. Rumors spread like wildfire. Embezzlement, fraud. Someone said the SEC was involved. People spoke in hushed clusters, eyes wide with the particular fear that came when the ship you were on started taking water. Ethan tried to focus on work and failed completely. He kept thinking about Victoria's face last night, that brittle control. She'd known. She'd probably known for days and couldn't say anything, not even to him, because he wasn't actually her partner. He was an employee playing a role. At 2 p.m., his phone buzzed. "Victoria, need you tonight. Emergency board dinner, car at 6. Ethan stared at the message. Tonight was Friday. They didn't have anything scheduled until Sunday, and Leo had a soccer game at 6:30, his first one, the thing Ethan had been able to say yes to because of this whole arrangement. "Ethan, I have something with my son tonight. Can we reschedule?" The response came fast. "Victoria, this isn't optional. The board wants to see stability. That includes me. 6 p.m. Ethan's hands tightened around his phone. He thought about the contract, about the clause that said reasonable flexibility for family emergencies. But this wasn't Leo being sick. This was a soccer game. 1 game out of 12, not technically an emergency. He typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on one. "Ethan, I'll be there." Then he called Mrs. Chen and asked if she could take Leo to the game. Her kind voice on the other end, "Of course, Ethan, don't worry," made him feel like the worst father alive. When he picked Leo up from school that afternoon, he knelt down in the parking lot and broke the news. "Buddy, I'm so sorry, but I have to work tonight. Mrs. Chen is going to take you to your game." Leo's face crumpled, then recovered, with the speed of a kid who'd learned disappointment was safer swallowed than expressed. "It's okay." "It's not okay. It's your first game. I should be there." "You said work was important." "The fancy stuff." Leo kicked at a pebble. "It's fine." "Leo, Dad, really? It's fine." But his voice was small, and he wouldn't meet Ethan's eyes. Ethan pulled him into a hug. "I'll make it up to you. I promise." Leo nodded against his shoulder. They drove home in silence. At 6 p.m., Ethan climbed into the town car wearing his Navy suit and hating himself. The car drove across town to a private club Ethan didn't know existed. The kind of place with no sign, just a discreet door and a man in a suit who checked names against a list. Inside was all dark wood and leather, oil paintings and hushed voices, the smell of old money and older secrets. Victoria waited in a private dining room, surrounded by 8 board members Ethan vaguely recognized from company meetings. They were all men, all over 50, all wearing expressions of carefully controlled concern. "Gentlemen," Victoria said as Ethan entered, "you remember Ethan Cole." They nodded, shook his hand. Ethan sat beside Victoria at the long mahogany table, feeling like a prop in a play he didn't understand. The dinner was brutal, not because anyone was rude, they were unfailingly polite. But Ethan could feel the subtext beneath every conversation, the real meeting happening in the spaces between words. The board was scared. Sterling's stock had dropped 6% by market close. Investors were asking questions, and they needed to know Victoria had control. "This Chen situation," one board member said carefully, cutting his steak with surgical precision. "Do we know the full scope?" "Investigation is ongoing," Victoria replied, voice steady, "but I'm confident we'll resolve it quickly and transparently. The optics are concerning, coming on the heels of the Donovan acquisition. The Donovan acquisition was successful and profitable. This is unrelated. But perception is manageable." Victoria's tone could have frozen water. "I've handled crises before. This is no different." Another board member leaned forward. "Victoria, no one's questioning your competence. But the shareholders are nervous. We need to project stability across all fronts." His eyes flicked to Ethan, just briefly, but the meaning was clear. "Even your personal life needs to look stable." Ethan felt Victoria's hand find his under the table, fingers lacing through his own. The touch was warm, solid, completely for show. He squeezed back, playing his part. "I appreciate your concern," Victoria said, "but Sterling is stronger than one bad actor. We'll weather this." The conversation moved on. Ethan said almost nothing, just sat there holding Victoria's hand and being visible proof that she was human, balanced, someone who had a life beyond boardrooms and crises. When they finally escaped 2 hours later, Victoria was silent in the car. Ethan watched the city slide past the windows, thinking about Leo's game, wondering if they'd won, if his son had looked for him in the stands and felt that particular ache when he wasn't there. "I'm sorry about tonight," Victoria said quietly. Ethan turned. "What?" "I know you had plans. With Leo." She stared straight ahead. "I wouldn't have called if it wasn't necessary." "Would you have told me what was happening with the CFO?" Victoria's jaw tightened. "You don't have security clearance for that information." "I'm not asking as an employee. I'm asking as—" Ethan stopped. "As what? Her fake boyfriend? Her paid escort? As someone who's supposed to support you. How can I do that if I don't know what I'm supporting?" "You did exactly what you needed to do tonight. You were there. You looked stable and supportive. That's the job." "The job," Ethan repeated. The word tasted bitter. Victoria finally looked at him. "What do you want me to say, Ethan? That I'll tell you every crisis before it breaks? That I'll consult you on board decisions? We have an arrangement, a professional one. Tonight you fulfilled your end. I'll fulfill mine. By paying me." "Yes." The word hung between them like a wall. "I missed my son's first soccer game for this." Ethan said quietly, just so you know what it cost. Something flickered in Victoria's expression. Guilt, maybe, or regret. But it was gone too fast to be sure. I'm sorry, she said again. And this time she sounded like she meant it. The car stopped at Ethan's building. He climbed out without saying goodbye. Inside, Mrs. Chen reported that Leo's team had lost 3-1, but Leo had played well. Leo was already asleep, soccer uniform still on, one small hand clutching the participation medal they'd given him. Ethan sat on the edge of his bed and watched him breathe, feeling the weight of every choice that had led him here. $60,000. 6 months. A better life for his son. But what did it matter if Leo had new cleats and a nicer apartment if Ethan wasn't actually there? He didn't sleep that night. Just lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering when exactly he'd started losing himself. The weekend brought worse news. On Saturday, the Wall Street Journal ran a feature. Trouble at Sterling, CFO scandal raises questions about leadership. The article was brutal. It questioned Victoria's oversight, suggested she'd been too focused on expansion and not enough on internal controls, included quotes from unnamed sources calling her aggressive and difficult to work with, code words everyone understood. By Saturday afternoon, think pieces appeared on business blogs, many written by men who'd never run companies a tenth the size of Sterling, explaining what Victoria had done wrong. Ethan read them and felt sick. Sunday evening's dinner was at Arcadia again, same table by the window, same performance. But something was different. Victoria looked tired, not just physically, though there were shadows under her eyes she'd covered with makeup, but tired in a deeper way. Worn down. How are you holding up? Ethan asked after they'd ordered. I'm fine. Victoria. I'm handling it, Ethan. The board is nervous but supportive. Our lawyers are managing the investigation. Stock prices will recover once we demonstrate control. She recited it like a script she'd memorized. Everything is fine. You don't look fine. Her eyes flashed. What do you want me to say? That I'm exhausted? That I've slept maybe 10 hours all week? That I'm fighting board members who think a woman CEO can't handle a crisis? She took a breath, controlled herself. I'm not going to fall apart, if that's what you're worried about. I don't have that luxury. I'm not worried you'll fall apart. I'm worried you're alone in this. I am alone in this. That's the job. It doesn't have to be. Victoria laughed, short and sharp. Ethan, you're very sweet, but you don't understand how this works. I'm the CEO. That means when things go wrong, I stand alone. The board isn't there to support me. They're there to protect their investments. My executives are worried about their own careers, and you... She stopped. I what? You're here because I'm paying you to be. The words landed like a slap. True, but cruel in their honesty. Ethan set down his fork. Is that really what you think? It's what I know. We have a contract. You perform a role. I compensate you. That's the arrangement. And if I told you I actually give a damn what happens to you? That I'm not just here for the money? Victoria's expression went very still. Then I'd say you're confused. We're not friends, Ethan. We're not actually dating. This is business. Right. Business. Ethan signaled for the waiter. Check, please. What are you doing? I'm done performing for tonight. Ethan pulled out his wallet, but Victoria's hand shot across the table, stopping him. Don't. I'll handle it. Of course you will. You handle everything. Ethan stood. Good luck with the board, Victoria. I'm sure you'll manage fine alone. He walked out of the restaurant, ignoring the curious stares, ignoring the photographer who'd been lurking near the entrance. He walked 3 blocks before the adrenaline wore off and reality crashed in. He'd just walked out on Victoria Lane in the middle of a public dinner. He just violated the contract. He just destroyed the one thing keeping him and Leo afloat. Ethan's phone buzzed before he'd gone another block. Victoria. Get back here. He kept walking. Victoria. Ethan. We need to talk. Victoria. Fine. Car will pick you up tomorrow, 7 a.m. My office. This isn't negotiable. Ethan turned off his phone and went home. 7 a.m. came too fast. Ethan hadn't told Leo what happened, just got him ready for school with robotic efficiency, his mind racing through every possible scenario. Victoria would fire him, demand the money back, sue him for breach of contract. He'd lose everything. But when he walked into her office, Victoria didn't look angry. She looked exhausted. "Sit," she said. Ethan sat. Victoria moved to the window, arms crossed, silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet. "You were right last night. I was cruel. I'm sorry." Ethan blinked. "What?" "You didn't deserve that. What I said about the contract, about you only being here for money." She turned to face him. "It was unfair." "It was true." "Was it?" Victoria moved to her desk, leaned against it. "Because the Ethan who walked out of that restaurant last night wasn't performing. He was angry, genuinely angry. About me being alone, about me pushing you away." She paused. "That's not someone who's just here for a paycheck." Ethan didn't know what to say. "I've spent 20 years building walls," Victoria continued, "protecting myself, proving I don't need anyone. And I'm very good at it. Too good." She looked at him directly. "But you're right. I am alone. And maybe that's not strength. Maybe it's just fear dressed up as power." "Victoria, let me finish." She took a breath. "This arrangement we have, it was supposed to be simple, professional. You play a role, I pay you, nobody gets hurt. But somewhere in the last month, it stopped being simple, for me at least." Ethan's heart hammered. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I look forward to our dinners. Not because they're useful for my image, but because you're interesting. You're real. You don't treat me like a CEO or a figurehead or a problem to manage. You treat me like a person." Victoria's voice wavered slightly. "And I haven't been treated like a person in a very long time." "So what do we do?" Ethan asked quietly. "I don't know. The contract still exists. The arrangement is still necessary, more than ever, with the board breathing down my neck. But maybe we stop pretending it's only business." She met his eyes. "Maybe we admit that somewhere between the photographs and the performances, something real happened." Ethan stood, moved closer. "And if I said I felt the same thing? Then we'd have a problem." Victoria's smile was sad. "Because I'm still your boss. You're still being paid to be here. And even if what we feel is real, the foundation it's built on is completely fake. So we're trapped. We're complicated." Victoria reached out, her fingers brushing his hand. "But I'd rather be complicated with you than simple and alone." Ethan took her hand. The touch was electric, familiar now, but still startling in its intensity. "For what it's worth," he said, "I stopped performing about 2 weeks ago. Everything since then has been real." Victoria's expression cracked just slightly. "That's worth quite a lot, actually." They stood there, hands linked, both of them aware they'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. "The board dinner Friday," Victoria said. "I need you there. But I'm asking now, not demanding. Can you make it?" "I'll make it work. And Leo's games, I'll work around them. No more last-minute emergencies unless it's truly critical." Ethan nodded. "Thank you." Victoria squeezed his hand once, then released it. "Now, get back to work before Caroline starts rumors about why you're up here." Ethan smiled, turned to leave. At the door, he paused. "Victoria?" "Yes?" "For the record, you're not alone anymore. Even if this whole thing is fake, that part's real." He left before she could respond, but not before he saw the expression on her face, something between relief and terror, like she'd just realized she wanted something she'd spent years convincing herself she didn't need. The next 3 weeks were different. The same performances, the same public appearances, but underneath it all, something had shifted. Victoria's hand on his arm felt like a choice, not a choreographed move. Their conversations over dinner went deeper, real stories about their lives, not just surface pleasantries for observers. Ethan learned that Victoria had grown up poor, that Sterling Global was built from student loans and 100-hour weeks and sheer determination. Victoria learned that Ethan had wanted to be a teacher before Leo came along, and financial reality made dreams impractical. They didn't talk about what was happening between them, didn't label it or analyze it, just let it exist in the margins of the arrangement, real and impossible at the same time. The Sterling scandal slowly resolved. The investigation cleared Victoria of any wrongdoing. The CFO was prosecuted and stock prices recovered. The board breathed easier. The press moved on to other crises. And then, on a Tuesday afternoon in the 6th week, everything collapsed. Ethan was at his desk when his phone exploded with notifications. Text messages from Jamie, from numbers he didn't recognize, all saying the same thing. "Have you seen it?" He opened his news app with shaking hands. The headline was everywhere. Sterling Global CEO Victoria Lane engaged to billionaire Marcus Hendricks in mega merger deal. Ethan read it 3 times, then 4. The words didn't make sense. The article explained that Victoria and Marcus Hendricks, the same Marcus who'd cornered them at the charity gala, had reached an agreement. Hendricks Capital would acquire a 30% stake in Sterling Global for $800 million. As part of the deal, Victoria and Marcus would marry within the year, combining their companies into a new partnership that would dominate 3 industries. The announcement had been made an hour ago at a press conference Ethan hadn't known was happening. There were photos. Victoria and Marcus standing together, his arm around her waist, both of them smiling. The caption called it the business marriage of the decade. Ethan's phone rang. Victoria's number. He answered. "Ethan." Her voice was tight. "Is it true?" "I can explain." "Is it true?" he repeated. Silence. Then quietly, "Yes." Ethan felt something crack in his chest. "When were you going to tell me?" "I found out yesterday. The board pushed it through. Marcus has been pursuing this for months, and with the CFO scandal, they thought stability. So you're marrying him for business. It's more complicated than that." "How is it complicated? You're marrying a billionaire to save your company. That's pretty simple." "Ethan, please, were any of it real?" His voice cracked. "The last 3 weeks, the things you said about feeling something, was any of that true, or was I just a placeholder until a better deal came along?" "Don't do that. Don't cheapen what, Victoria? We don't have anything. We never did. You said it yourself, it was always business." "I was wrong. I care about you." "Not enough." Ethan grabbed his jacket. "Not enough to choose me over $800 million. That's not fair." "No, what's not fair is making me believe I mattered when I was just another transaction." He was walking now, heading for the elevator, not caring who heard. "Congratulations on the engagement, Ms. Lane. I hope it's everything you wanted." He hung up. She called back immediately. He didn't answer. Jamie intercepted him at the elevator. "Dude, are you okay? What the hell is happening?" "I'm leaving." "Leaving where?" "Sterling. The city. All of it." Ethan jabbed the elevator button. "I'm done." "But your contract is null and void the second she married someone else. It's in the fine print." Ethan had read that contract front to back. The clause was clear. The arrangement terminated if either party entered into another romantic relationship, engaged or otherwise. The elevator arrived. Ethan stepped in. "Where will you go?" Jamie called. "Anywhere that isn't here." The doors closed. Ethan rode down 40 floors, walked out of Sterling Global's glass tower, and didn't look back. The next 72 hours were a blur. Ethan pulled Leo out of school, packed their apartment in boxes, and found a subletter to take over the lease. He applied for jobs in 3 different cities, Portland, Austin, Philadelphia, anywhere far enough away that he'd never accidentally run into Victoria Lane at a coffee shop or crosswalk. Leo asked questions Ethan couldn't answer. Why were they leaving? What about soccer? What about his friends? "It's time for something new," Ethan said, which was a lie wrapped in hope. Mrs. Chen cried when they said goodbye. Jamie helped them pack and didn't ask the questions Ethan could see in his eyes. Victoria called 17 times. Ethan didn't answer. She texted. He deleted them unread. On the 3rd day, she showed up at his apartment. Ethan opened the door to find her standing in the hallway, still in her work clothes, looking like she hadn't slept. "Don't," he said. "Whatever you're here to say, don't." 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking. "You don't get to ask for anything from me anymore." "Ethan, please, I know you're angry." "I'm not angry. I'm done." He started to close the door. Her hand shot out, stopping it. "I ended it," she said quickly. "The engagement, the merger, all of it. I called Marcus this morning and told him the deal was off." Ethan froze. "What?" "I can't do it. I tried. I went to the lawyers, signed the preliminary documents, stood for the photographs, and every second I was thinking about you, about what I'd said in my office, that I'd rather be complicated with you than simple and alone. Victoria's eyes were red-rimmed. Turns out I meant it. You walked away from $800 million. I walked away from a lie. I've spent my whole life building something I thought mattered more than anything else, more than happiness, more than connection, more than love. She took a shaky breath. But it doesn't. The company, the money, the power, none of it matters if I'm alone. And I was. Until you. Ethan leaned against the doorframe, feeling like the ground had disappeared beneath him. Why didn't you tell me? About Marcus, about the board pushing for the merger? Because I'm an idiot. Because I thought I could manage it, negotiate my way out, find a solution that didn't hurt you. Victoria's voice broke. Because I was scared that if I told you what I was up against, you'd see that I'm not worth fighting for. Victoria. But you did fight. You walked away because what we had mattered enough to hurt when I betrayed it. She moved closer. I've never had that. Never had someone care enough to be angry when I failed them. And I don't want to lose it. I don't want to lose you. Ethan looked at her, this brilliant, powerful woman standing in his shabby apartment hallway, looking more vulnerable than he'd ever seen her. What about the board? He asked quietly. They'll survive. I offered to step down if they insist on the merger. If they choose Marcus's money over my leadership, then Sterling isn't the company I thought it was. You'd give up everything you built? I'd give up everything fake to keep something real. Victoria reached for his hand. I know I don't deserve another chance. I know I hurt you, but I'm asking anyway. Don't leave. Don't take Leo and disappear to another city. Stay. Let me prove that what I feel is real. Ethan's throat was tight. Behind him, he could hear Leo playing in his room, oblivious to the fact that his entire future was being decided in a doorway. I don't know if I can trust you, Ethan said honestly. I know. I'll earn it back. However long it takes. Victoria squeezed his hand. I love you, Ethan. I should have said it weeks ago. I love the way you make me laugh when I've forgotten how. I love that you called me out when I was being cruel. I love that you're terrified at these events, but you show up anyway because you promised you would. I love who I am when I'm with you. That's not fair. What isn't? Saying that now, making it real when I've spent 6 weeks trying to protect myself from exactly this. I know. I'm sorry. Victoria's eyes searched his face. But I'm here. I'm choosing you. I'm choosing us, whatever that means, however messy it gets. Tell me it's not too late. Ethan looked at her. This woman who'd straightened his tie and asked why he was breathing funny. This woman who'd offered him money to pretend and somehow made it real. This woman who'd just walked away from a fortune because she'd rather have him. It's insane, he said. Completely. The board will never accept it. The optics of a CEO dating an admin. I already promoted you. Senior operations manager, effective immediately. Not because of us, but because you're good at your job and you've been overlooked for 6 years. Victoria smiled slightly. Though that does solve the power dynamics issue. You promoted me. Yes. And ended your engagement. Yes. And you're standing in my hallway saying you love me. Yes. Victoria's voice was steady now, certain. I'm saying I love you, and I'm asking you to stay. Not for money, not for a contract, just because you want to. Because what we have is worth the risk. Ethan pulled her inside, closed the door, and kissed her. It wasn't like the performances. Wasn't careful or calculated or designed for cameras. It was desperate and real and tasted like relief and terror and the truth they'd been dancing around for weeks. When they finally pulled apart, Victoria was crying. Is that a yes? She whispered. That's a yes to staying, to trying, to seeing if this thing between us can survive outside of contracts and performances. Ethan touched her face. But Victoria, if this is going to work, it has to be real. No more walls, no more pretending you're fine when you're not, no more handling everything alone. I don't know how to do that. Neither do I, but we'll learn together. Victoria nodded, then laughed, shaky but genuine. The board is going to lose their minds. Let them. You're the CEO. They work for you, remember? Technically, they represent the shareholders. Ethan kissed her again, cutting off the business speak. When he pulled back, she was smiling. I love you, she said again, like she was testing the words. I love you too, even though you're terrifying and complicated and you made me miss my son's soccer game. I'll make it to the next one, I promise. You better. He's been asking about the fancy lady I work with. Victoria's eyes went wide. He knows. Kids always know. He's just been too polite to ask directly. Ethan glanced toward Leo's room. You ready to meet him? For real this time, not as my boss, but as someone who matters? Victoria looked genuinely nervous for the first time since Ethan had met her. What if he doesn't like me? He'll like you. You're not as scary as you think. I'm extremely scary? Yeah, but you make a good first impression when you're not trying to intimidate people. Ethan called Leo out. His son appeared in the hallway, dinosaur toy in hand, and stopped short when he saw Victoria. Leo, this is Victoria. Victoria, this is my son Leo. Leo studied her with the serious intensity of 8-year-olds. You're the fancy work lady. I am, Victoria said, kneeling down to his eye level. Though I'm hoping to be more than just a work lady, if that's okay with you. Are you dating my dad? Victoria glanced at Ethan, who nodded. Yes, she said. Is that okay? Leo considered this. Does this mean we're not moving? That depends. Do you want to stay? Yeah, my friends are here. And soccer. Leo paused. Are you nice to my dad? Victoria's expression softened. I try to be. Sometimes I mess up, but I'm working on being better. Okay. Leo held out his dinosaur. Do you want to play dinosaurs? Dad's not very good at the voices. I would love to play dinosaurs. Ethan watched Victoria Lane, CEO of a $4 billion company, sit cross-legged on their shabby apartment carpet and make T-Rex sounds for his 8-year-old son. Watched her laugh when Leo corrected her roar technique. Watched his son warm to her with the natural ease of children who haven't learned to be cynical yet. And he thought about how 3 months ago she'd touched his tie in a hallway and asked why he was breathing funny. How that single moment had unraveled his invisible life and rebuilt it into something he didn't recognize. How terrifying it was to love someone who could destroy everything with a single choice. How terrifying it was to be loved back. The story broke the next morning. Victoria Lane cancels Hendricks merger, calls off engagement. By noon, business networks were running analysis pieces. Sterling's stock dipped 2%, then recovered. The board issued a terse statement supporting Victoria's leadership. Marcus Hendricks's camp released a passive-aggressive comment about respecting personal decisions. And somewhere in the noise, someone noticed that Victoria Lane had been photographed leaving an apartment building in Riverside at 11 p.m., smiling. The speculation began immediately. Ethan ignored it. He'd learned his lesson about caring what strangers thought. Instead, he went to work. His new position came with an actual office and responsibilities that mattered, and tried to figure out how to be both a senior operations manager and Victoria Lane's boyfriend without losing his mind. It wasn't easy. The whispers followed him everywhere. Some people were supportive, others thought he'd slept his way to a promotion. A few made it clear they'd never respect someone who dated the CEO. Ethan learned to let it roll off, because at the end of the day, he went home to Leo and their small apartment, and twice a week Victoria came over for dinner, real dinner, not performance dinner, and helped Leo with homework and laughed at Ethan's terrible cooking. It was messy and complicated and nothing like the fairy tale the photographs suggested, but it was real. And real, Ethan was learning, was worth more than any contract could measure. 3 months of real changed everything and nothing at all. Victoria still worked 70-hour weeks. Ethan still juggled Leo's school schedule with board meetings he was now actually invited to attend. They still navigated the impossible mathematics of a relationship built on a foundation that had started as performance, trying to figure out which parts were real and which were just habits they'd learned too well. Some days were easy. Saturday mornings, when Victoria showed up at their apartment with bagels and the newspaper, sitting at their wobbly kitchen table while Leo told her elaborate stories about dinosaurs and soccer and a girl named Emma who could do backflips. Evenings, when Ethan met her at the office after Leo was asleep, bringing coffee and sitting in the visitor's chair while she worked through contracts, just being present in the quiet way she'd told him she needed. Other days were hard. When board members questioned Ethan's qualifications in meetings, voices polite but eyes sharp, with the clear implication that he'd earned his position on his back. When photographers caught them at Leo's soccer games and the photos appeared online with captions about CEO Victoria Lane playing house with her much younger boyfriend. When Victoria retreated behind her walls because vulnerability still terrified her and Ethan had to decide whether to push or give her space. They were learning, stumbling through it, making it up as they went. And then Marcus Hendricks came back. It started with flowers, a massive arrangement delivered to Sterling's executive floor, addressed to Victoria, card reading simply, "Congratulations on Q3 earnings. We should talk." M. Victoria threw them in the trash without comment, but Ethan saw the tension in her shoulders. The next week, Marcus appeared at a charity auction they attended. He bid against Victoria on a sculpture, driving the price up to $200,000 before graciously conceding with a smile that was all teeth and strategy. He stopped by their table afterward. "Victoria, Ethan, lovely to see you both." Marcus's suit probably cost more than Ethan's monthly salary. His smile was practiced perfection. "That's quite a piece you won. Contemporary expressionism isn't usually your style." "I'm expanding my collection," Victoria said coolly. "Was there something you needed, Marcus?" "Just wanted to say hello. We're still colleagues in this industry, after all." His eyes flicked to Ethan. "How's operations management treating you, Ethan? Quite a promotion from administrative work." The implication was clear. You're only here because you're sleeping with her. Ethan met his gaze steadily. "It's challenging, rewarding. I'm learning a lot." "I'm sure you are," Marcus smiled wider. "Victoria's always been an excellent teacher, when she wants to be." Victoria's hand found Ethan's under the table, squeezing hard enough to hurt, warning him, or warning herself. "If you'll excuse us, Marcus, we were just leaving," she said, standing smoothly. Ethan followed her lead. "Of course. Enjoy your evening." Marcus raised his champagne glass. "We'll talk soon, Victoria. I have a proposition that might interest you." They left without responding. In the car, Victoria was silent, staring out the window at the city sliding past. "What does he want?" Ethan asked finally. "Nothing good." Victoria's jaw was tight. "Marcus doesn't make social visits. Everything's strategy." "Should I be worried?" "I don't know." She turned to look at him. "Probably." The worry sat between them like a third passenger all the way home. 2 days later, Ethan found out what Marcus's proposition was. He was in his office, still getting used to having an actual office with a door and a window, when Caroline appeared, expression carefully neutral. "Mr. Cole, Miss Lane needs to see you. Conference room 7, immediately." The tone made Ethan's stomach drop. Conference room 7 was where Victoria held difficult meetings. Terminations. Crisis management. Bad news delivered behind closed doors. He followed Caroline down the hall, past curious stares from people who still weren't sure what to make of him. The conference room door was frosted glass, opaque, hiding whatever was happening inside. Caroline opened it. "Mr. Cole." Inside, Victoria sat at the head of the table. Beside her were 3 people Ethan recognized from the board. Richard Sterling, the chairman and founder's grandson, Margaret Chen, no relation to the disgraced CFO, and Thomas Wright, who'd always struck Ethan as reasonable. Their expressions ranged from uncomfortable to grim. "Sit," Victoria said. Her voice was completely professional. CEO voice. The one that meant she'd locked away everything personal and was operating purely on strategy. Ethan sat. His hands were clammy. Richard Sterling spoke first. "Mr. Cole, we've asked you here because a situation has arisen that affects both you and Miss Lane. We felt it was important to address it directly." "What situation?" Margaret Chen slid a folder across the table. "Marcus Hendricks has made Sterling Global an offer, a very substantial offer." Ethan opened the folder. Inside were documents dense with legal language and numbers. He skimmed them, not understanding half of it, until he reached the summary page. Marcus was offering to acquire 40% of Sterling Global for $1.2 billion. The deal would make him the largest single shareholder. It would give him a seat on the board and significant influence over company direction. And it came with one very specific condition. He wants you to step down, Ethan said, looking at Victoria. Not step down, Thomas Wright corrected. Transition to a chairman role, strategic oversight, less operational involvement. Marcus would become CEO. Victoria's expression was stone. Marcus wants my company. It's not just your company, Richard said, not unkindly. It's 4,000 employees and tens of thousands of shareholders, and this offer would increase share value by 37% overnight, while giving Marcus Hendricks exactly what he wanted when I refused to marry him. Victoria's voice was sharp as glass. This is revenge dressed up as business. It's business regardless of motivation, Margaret said. The board has a fiduciary duty to consider any offer that benefits shareholders. This qualifies. Ethan felt sick. You're actually considering this? We're obligated to consider it, Thomas said. But there's a complication. He pulled out another document. This one was shorter. Ethan read it twice before the implications sank in. He's making this contingent on me leaving Sterling, Ethan said slowly. Not leaving, transferring. Marcus has suggested that it would be in everyone's best interest if you accepted a position at one of Sterling's satellite offices. Houston, specifically. Senior director level, significant salary increase, relocation package included. Richard's voice was carefully neutral. It's actually a generous offer for someone at your experience level. It's a bribe to get me away from Victoria. It's an acknowledgement that optics matter, Margaret said. Marcus has made it clear that he views your relationship with Ms. Lane as a conflict of interest. If you remain at Sterling while in a romantic relationship with the CEO or chairman under this new structure, it creates complications, perception issues. We're not doing anything wrong. Legally, no. Ethically, it's complicated, and in business, perception often matters more than reality. Margaret looked genuinely sympathetic. I'm not saying I agree with Marcus's position. I'm saying it's one he's weaponizing effectively. Ethan looked at Victoria. Her face was carefully blank, but he could see the muscle ticking in her jaw, the way her hands were pressed flat against the table like she was physically holding herself together. What do you want to do? He asked her directly. It doesn't matter what I want. The board has to vote. That's not what I asked. Something flickered in her expression. Pain, maybe. Or rage she couldn't express in front of these people who were supposed to be on her side. We're voting Friday, Richard said. 3 days. We wanted to give you both time to consider your options before we make this public. How considerate, Victoria said, voice dripping ice. Victoria Tiki, Thomas started. We're done here, she stood abruptly. Thank you for the advance notice. Ethan and I will discuss this privately. She walked out without waiting for a response. Ethan followed, leaving the board members in uncomfortable silence. He caught up with her in her office. She'd closed the door and stood at the window, arms crossed, staring out at the city like it might have answers. Victoria, don't. Her voice shook. Don't say anything comforting right now. I can't afford to fall apart. Ethan moved closer, but didn't touch her. What are you thinking? I'm thinking Marcus is a vindictive bastard who can't handle rejection. I'm thinking the board is spineless for even entertaining this. I'm thinking I built this company from nothing, and now they're ready to hand it to someone else because I chose you over a merger. She turned to face him. I'm thinking I don't know how to win this. What happens if the board votes yes? Then Marcus gets what he wants, control of Sterling eventually. He'll let me be chairman for 6 months, maybe a year, then push me out completely. I've seen him do it before. And if they vote no, then he'll probably wage a proxy war, try to replace board members, make things difficult enough that eventually someone gives in. Victoria's laugh was bitter. Either way, he wins something. Unless you accept. Victoria's eyes snapped to his. Accept? His offer. Step down. Become chairman. Let him have the operational control. Ethan's throat was tight. Take the deal and keep the company alive, even if it's not the way you wanted. You're saying I should give up. I'm saying you should survive. There's a difference. Victoria moved away from the window, closer to him. And what about you? His condition, that you transfer to Houston, that we're separated by 1,000 miles. I go. The words hurt coming out. If it saves Sterling, if it means you don't lose everything you built, then I go. Just like that? No, not just like that. It would destroy me, but I do it anyway. Ethan took her hands. 3 months ago, you walked away from $800 million because you chose us over business. Maybe it's my turn to make that choice. I don't want you to make that choice. Neither do I. But Victoria, this isn't about what we want anymore. It's about what you can live with. He squeezed her hands. I've watched you build your entire identity around this company. Sterling isn't just what you do. It's who you are. If you lose it fighting Marcus, if you let him take it because you refuse to compromise, that will eat you alive. And if I let him win, if I step aside and watch him destroy everything I built while you're in Houston and I'm here alone, her voice cracked, that will destroy me just as much. Then we're trapped. Again. They stood there in her office, hands linked, both of them staring at an impossible choice, love or legacy, relationship or company, each other or everything else. There has to be another way, Victoria said. Some angle we're missing. Like what? I don't know. Let me think. She pulled away, started pacing. Marcus needs the board to vote yes. That requires a majority, 5 out of 8 votes. Richard will vote yes. He's always been conservative. Margaret's probably yes. Thomas might be persuadable. The others are wild cards. So you need to flip enough votes to block the deal. Yes. But with what argument? Marcus's offer is objectively good for shareholders. Saying no costs them hundreds of millions in value. I need a better offer or a reason his deal is fundamentally flawed. What about the conflict of interest angle? If he's only doing this because you rejected him personally, that's not exactly pure business motivation. Victoria stopped pacing. That's actually not bad. If I can prove Marcus is acting out of personal vendetta rather than legitimate business interest, the board might see the deal as too risky, complicated by his ego. How do you prove that? I'd need evidence, emails, communications, something that shows his real motivation. Her eyes were sharp now, calculating. Marcus is arrogant. He's probably said something incriminating to someone. Who? I don't know, but I have 3 days to find out. Ethan recognized the look on her face. This was CEO Victoria, the one who'd built a billion-dollar company through sheer force of will, the one who saw problems as puzzles and solved them through strategy and relentless work. What do you need me to do? He asked. Be ready to fight. This is going to get ugly. She moved back to her desk, already pulling up files on her computer. And Ethan, don't accept anything Marcus offers you, no matter what the board says, no matter how generous the package looks. If you take that Houston position, it's over. He wins. I won't take it. Promise me. I promise. Ethan moved to the door, then paused. Victoria, whatever happens Friday, we figure it out together, okay? She looked up from her screen, and for just a second, the CEO mask slipped. She was just a woman who was scared of losing everything again. Together, she agreed. The next 72 hours were a masterclass in corporate warfare. Victoria worked around the clock, pulling every connection she had. She called board members individually, making her case. She reached out to major shareholders, reminding them that Sterling's success was built on her leadership, not Marcus's money. She tasked her legal team with combing through every communication between Marcus and the board, looking for proof of his real motivations. Ethan helped where he could. He researched Marcus's history, found 3 other companies where he'd made similar offers, taken control, then gutted leadership and sold off assets for profit. He compiled data showing that Sterling's growth under Victoria outperformed industry averages by 40%. He prepared presentations, organized documents, and stayed at the office until midnight helping Victoria build her defense. Leo stayed with Mrs. Chen more than usual. Ethan hated it, hated missing bedtime and homework and the small moments that mattered, but Leo seemed to understand in that intuitive way kids sometimes did. Is the fancy lady in trouble? He asked one night when Ethan came home at 11 p.m. Yeah, buddy, she is. Are you helping her? Trying to. Leo nodded seriously. That's good. You should help people you love. Out of the mouths of children, Ethan thought. When did you get so wise? I'm 8. I know things. Leo paused. Dad? Do you love her? For real? Ethan sat on the edge of Leo's bed. Yeah, for real. Good. She makes you smile. You didn't smile much before. Leo yawned. She can stay. I'll let her know you approve. Thursday night, Victoria found something. Ethan was at his own apartment, finally getting a few hours with Leo, when his phone rang at 9 p.m. I have it, Victoria said without preamble. The evidence. What did you find? Email thread between Marcus and Richard Sterling from 2 months ago. Before Marcus ever made the public offer, he explicitly states that his primary motivation is correcting Victoria's poor judgment regarding personal relationships that interfere with business decisions. Her voice was vibrating with controlled fury. He literally admits this is about punishing me for choosing you. That's proof of conflict of interest. Exactly. If the board approves a deal that's primarily motivated by personal vendetta, they're violating their fiduciary duty. It exposes them to shareholder lawsuits. How did you get the emails? Richard's assistant is my former intern. She's been loyal to me for 8 years. When I asked if Richard had any communications with Marcus that seemed unusual, she found this thread. Victoria paused. I'm sending it to every board member tonight. Emergency meeting tomorrow morning before the vote. Victoria, be careful. If Richard finds out his assistant leaked confidential emails, I'll protect her, but right now this is our only chance. Okay? What do you need me to do? Be there tomorrow, 9 a.m. If this works, I want you in the room. If it doesn't, she trailed off. If it doesn't, we'll figure it out. You keep saying that. Because I mean it. I love you. The words came out raw, unguarded. Whatever happens tomorrow, I need you to know that. This is real. Us. It's the realest thing I have. Ethan's chest was tight. I love you too. Now go get some sleep. You need to be sharp tomorrow. I'm too anxious to sleep. Try anyway, for me. Fine, but if this goes wrong, it won't. But if it does, then we'll handle it. Together. Ethan smiled even though she couldn't see it. That's what love means, remember? We don't run when things get hard. Victoria was quiet for a moment. When did you get so wise? I'm 34. I know things. She laughed despite everything. Good night, Ethan. Good night. Friday morning arrived cold and gray, the kind of weather that matched the tension crackling through Sterling's executive floor. Ethan arrived at 8:45 wearing his best suit, prepared for battle or surrender. He wasn't sure which. Victoria was already in the boardroom, standing at the head of the table like a general preparing for war. The board members filed in one by one, expressions ranging from curious to annoyed at the emergency meeting. Marcus Hendricks arrived last, precisely at 9, looking perfectly composed in a charcoal suit that probably cost 5 figures. He took the seat opposite Victoria like this was just another negotiation. Thank you all for coming, Victoria began. I apologize for the short notice, but information has come to light that necessitates discussion before today's vote. Richard Sterling frowned. What information? Victoria pulled up a screen projecting an email thread for everyone to see. This communication between you and Marcus Hendricks dated October 12th, 2 months before his formal offer to acquire shares in Sterling. Richard's face went carefully blank. Marcus didn't react at all. Victoria read from the email, her voice steady and cold. Quote, the issue isn't Sterling's performance. Victoria's numbers speak for themselves. The issue is her poor judgment regarding personal relationships that interfere with business decisions. A CEO dating a subordinate creates liability and suggests compromised priorities. My offer would correct this situation while rewarding shareholders. I trust you see the value in both outcomes. The room was silent. Marcus has explicitly stated that his primary motivation for this acquisition is not business performance or shareholder value, but punishing me for my relationship with Ethan Cole. Victoria's eyes swept the board. This isn't a business deal, it's a personal vendetta. And if this board approves an acquisition motivated by personal grievance rather than legitimate business interest, you're exposing Sterling to shareholder lawsuits and violating your fiduciary duty. Margaret Chen spoke first. Is this email authenticated? Fully. My legal team verified it this morning. Thomas Wright looked at Marcus. Care to respond? Marcus smiled calmly. The email is real, but Victoria's characterization is simplistic. My concern about her relationship with Mr. Cole isn't personal, it's professional. A CEO dating someone she promoted creates genuine conflict of interest. My offer addresses that concern alongside providing substantial value to shareholders. By requiring that I transfer to Houston, Ethan said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. Your offer specifically stipulates that I must leave Sterling's main offices. That's not addressing conflict of interest, that's eliminating someone you see as an obstacle. Mr. Cole, with respect, your qualifications for your current position are questionable. The promotion timeline directly correlates with your relationship with Ms. Lane. Removing you from that environment protects Sterling from potential litigation. I earned my position. Ethan's voice was steady, but his hands were clenched under the table. My performance reviews are excellent. My team's productivity is up 18% since I took over. The only people questioning my qualifications are those who can't imagine I might actually be good at my job. Marcus's smile thinned. The optics remain problematic. The optics of a billionaire trying to force out a CEO because she rejected his marriage proposal are also problematic, Victoria shot back. But you don't seem concerned about those. This is getting us nowhere, Richard interjected. The question before the board is whether Marcus's offer serves Sterling's best interests. Personal motivations aside, it does provide significant value. It also creates significant risk, Victoria countered. Marcus has a pattern of acquiring companies, installing himself as CEO, and then stripping assets for profit. I've compiled documentation of 3 companies where this exact scenario played out. Hendricks Capital bought in, took control, and within 18 months the companies were shells of their former selves. She pulled up another presentation. Data, charts, news articles about failed acquisitions. It was devastating and thorough. You're asking this board to hand Sterling Global to someone with a proven track record of destroying the companies he acquires. And for what? A 37% bump in share price that will evaporate when Marcus starts gutting us for parts? The board members exchanged glances. Ethan could see the calculation happening, weighing immediate profit against long-term risk, personal loyalty against fiduciary duty. I moved to table Marcus's offer pending further investigation into potential conflicts of interest, Thomas Wright said suddenly. We need independent legal review before proceeding. Seconded, Margaret Chen added. Richard looked frustrated but nodded. All in favor? 5 hands went up. Only Richard and 2 others abstained. Victoria's shoulders lowered slightly, relief disguised as victory. Marcus stood smoothly. This isn't over, Victoria. I'll be back with a revised offer, one you'll find harder to refuse. I look forward to refusing it anyway. Victoria's smile was all teeth. Marcus left without another word. The board members filed out, murmuring among themselves. When the room finally cleared, only Victoria and Ethan remained. She sagged against the table, suddenly exhausted. We won, Ethan said. We bought time. That's not the same as winning. But she was smiling slightly. Though watching Marcus's face when Thomas moved to table the offer was deeply satisfying. You were incredible in there. We were incredible. Victoria moved to him, took his hands. You standing up for yourself, defending your qualifications, that mattered. The board saw you as a person, not just my boyfriend. That changed the equation. So what happens now? Now Marcus regroups. He'll come back with something cleaner, harder to refuse, and I'll fight him again. She squeezed his hands. But for today, we survived. Sterling survives. We survive. Together. Together, she agreed. They stood there in the empty boardroom, hands linked, knowing this was just one battle in a war that might last years. But they'd won this round. They'd proven that love and business could coexist, that choosing each other didn't mean destroying everything else. It wasn't the ending Ethan had imagined 3 months ago when he'd signed that contract. It was messier, more complicated, infinitely harder. But it was real. And real, he'd learned, was worth fighting for, even when the fight cost everything. The victory over Marcus's first offer bought them 6 weeks of relative peace, and Victoria used every minute to fortify Sterling's defenses. She restructured voting rights, consolidated loyal shareholders, and built alliances with board members who valued long-term stability over quick profits. Ethan watched her work with a mixture of admiration and concern, because even in victory, she couldn't quite let herself rest. You know he's going to come back, Ethan said one night in her office. It was past midnight, and Victoria was still reviewing contracts while he organized files she'd asked him to pull. I know, that's why I'm preparing. You've been preparing for 6 weeks. At some point, you have to trust that you've done enough. Victoria looked up from her laptop, shadows under her eyes. That's not how this works. The moment I stop preparing is the moment he finds the weakness I missed. Or maybe the moment you stop preparing is when you finally get to live your life. She smiled tiredly. What life? This is my life. It always has been. It doesn't have to be the only thing. Ethan moved closer, gently closing her laptop. When's the last time you did something just because it made you happy? Not because it was strategic or necessary or good for the company? I spend time with you and Leo. That makes me happy. When you're not checking your phone every 5 minutes or mentally drafting responses to board members. Ethan's voice was gentle, not accusing. I'm not saying you should stop caring about Sterling. I'm saying maybe you could care about other things equally. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. I don't know how to do that. For 20 years, Sterling has been everything. If I let it be less than everything, what if it falls apart? Then you'll handle it. Because you're brilliant and capable, and you have people who'll help you. He took her hands. But Victoria, you can't live your whole life in crisis mode. Eventually, you have to let yourself be happy. I am happy when I'm with you. Are you? Or are you just less anxious for a few hours before the guilt kicks in about not working? The question hit home. Ethan could see it in the way her expression cracked slightly, defensive walls showing their seams. That's not fair, she said quietly. It's completely fair. I love you, which means I'm allowed to call you out when you're sacrificing your life on an altar that doesn't actually require human sacrifice. Despite everything, Victoria laughed. That's quite a metaphor. I've been reading Leo's mythology books. They're rubbing off on me. Ethan squeezed her hands. Come home with me tonight, not to my place, to yours. I've never even seen your apartment. It's not very interesting. Mostly I just sleep there. Exactly my point. Show me where you live. Let me see the parts of your life that aren't boardrooms and strategy sessions. Victoria hesitated, and Ethan recognized the fear in her eyes. Letting him into her private space meant vulnerability, meant admitting that the carefully controlled CEO persona wasn't the whole story. Okay, she said finally, but I'm warning you, it's very minimalist. You might find it depressing. I'll take that risk. Victoria's apartment was on the 32nd floor of a building downtown, all glass and steel and city views that probably cost a fortune. Ethan had expected luxury, and he found it. High ceilings, expensive furniture, art on the walls that he vaguely recognized from museum visits. But what struck him most was how empty it felt. Like a hotel room, beautifully designed, but utterly impersonal. You weren't kidding about minimalist, Ethan said, walking slowly through the living room. There were no photographs, no books left casually on tables, no signs that an actual human being lived here. Even the kitchen looked unused, all gleaming appliances and bare countertops. I'm rarely here, Victoria said, suddenly defensive. It's just a place to sleep. Where do you keep your personal things? Photos, mementos, stuff that matters? I don't really have those. Ethan turned to look at her. Everyone has those. I don't. When I built Sterling, I left everything else behind. There wasn't room for sentimentality. She moved to the window, arms crossed. This apartment is functional. That's all it needs to be. Ethan joined her at the window, both of them looking out at the city lights stretching to the horizon. Do you like it here? The question seemed to surprise her. Like it? Yeah, when you come home at night, does this place make you happy? Do you feel glad to be here? Victoria considered this, really considered it. No, she admitted. I feel like I'm killing time between work sessions. This isn't home. It's just where I keep my clothes. Then let's change that. Change what? This place. Make it actually yours. Ethan gestured around the sterile apartment. Buy things that make you happy. Put up photos, get a coffee maker that you actually use. Turn this into a home instead of a hotel. I don't have time for interior decorating. You have time for what you make time for. Ethan took her hand. And I'm not just talking about the apartment. I'm talking about building a life outside of Sterling, hobbies, friends. Lazy Sundays, doing absolutely nothing productive. Victoria looked at him like he'd suggested she grow wings and fly. I don't know how to do lazy Sundays. I know. That's why I'm going to teach you. Over the next month, Ethan made it his mission to show Victoria what life outside of work could look like. He convinced her to take Sundays off, fully off, phone on silent, no emails. They went to farmers markets and art galleries and took Leo to the park where Victoria learned to kick a soccer ball with awkward determination. She was terrible at it, but she laughed, and that was worth everything. He helped her buy things for her apartment: a coffee maker, books she'd always meant to read, a framed photo of the three of them at Leo's soccer game, Victoria's arm around Ethan's waist, Leo holding his medal, all of them smiling like they meant it. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Victoria started to relax. The constant tension in her shoulders eased. She started sleeping more than 4 hours a night. She even joined Leo and Ethan for movie nights, falling asleep on their couch during animated films about talking animals. I think you're domesticating me, she said one Sunday morning, sprawled on Ethan's couch in jeans and a sweater, the first time he'd seen her in anything other than business attire or formal wear. Is that a complaint? An observation, she smiled. 6 months ago, if someone had told me I'd spend my Sunday morning drinking coffee and watching cartoons, I would have thought they were insane. And now? Now I think I was the insane one, for thinking this wasn't important. She reached for his hand. Thank you, for showing me there's more to life than quarterly earnings and board meetings. You're welcome. Though I'm pretty sure Leo deserves credit too. He's the one who insisted you learn proper dinosaur facts. Those velociraptors were the size of chickens. That information has changed my entire worldview. Ethan laughed, pulling her closer. They sat there in comfortable silence while Leo built an elaborate block tower on the floor, and Ethan thought about how far they'd come from that first touch in the hallway, how a moment that should have meant nothing had somehow rebuilt both their lives into something neither of them had known they needed. Then his phone rang. Victoria's phone rang 2 seconds later. They looked at each other, that brief moment of peace shattering like glass. It's Caroline, Victoria said, checking her screen. Mine's Jamie, Ethan answered. What's wrong? Jamie's voice was tight. Turn on the news, business channel, now. Ethan grabbed the remote, switched channels. The headline appeared across the bottom of the screen. Marcus Hendricks launches hostile takeover bid for Sterling Global. Victoria was already on her phone with Caroline, her expression hardening into the CEO mask Ethan had seen her wear in crisis. He listened to the news anchor explain what hostile takeover meant, that Marcus had bypassed the board entirely and was making an offer directly to shareholders, promising a 50% premium on current stock price if they'd sell him their shares. How many does he need? Ethan asked when Victoria ended her call. 51% for controlling interest. Right now, he has access to maybe 30% through various investment vehicles. If he can convince another 21% to sell, she didn't finish the sentence. He takes Sterling. Yes. Victoria was already moving, grabbing her laptop, her phone, shifting into battle mode. I need to get to the office. Caroline's calling an emergency board meeting. I'm coming with you. Ethan, you should stay with Leo. Mrs. Chen can watch him. I'm coming. He was already texting their neighbor. We're in this together, remember? Victoria looked at him, and something in her expression softened despite the crisis. Together. They told Leo there was a work emergency, dropped him with Mrs. Chen, and raced to Sterling's offices. The building was buzzing even on a Sunday, executives arriving in casual clothes, looking grim, the kind of crisis that pulled everyone in regardless of day or time. The boardroom was chaos. Richard Sterling looked apoplectic. Margaret Chen was on the phone with lawyers. Thomas Wright was reviewing documents spread across the table. They all looked up when Victoria entered. Where do we stand? She asked, no preamble. Bad, Richard said bluntly. Marcus structured this brilliantly. He's offering such a high premium that shareholders would be financially irresponsible to refuse. Our institutional investors are already calling, asking if we're planning a counteroffer. Can we match his price? Thomas asked. Not without taking on massive debt that would cripple the company. Victoria's jaw was tight. That's his strategy. Offer more than Sterling can afford to match, force shareholders to choose between loyalty and money. Money wins, Margaret said grimly. It always does. Not always. Victoria looked around the table. We have options. We can fight this. How? Richard challenged. We don't have the capital for a counteroffer. We can't prevent shareholders from selling. What exactly do you propose? Victoria was silent for a long moment. Ethan could see her mind working, calculating, looking for the angle everyone else had missed. We make Sterling private, she said finally. The room went silent. That's insane, Richard said. The capital required, I have capital, my personal holdings, retirement accounts, every asset I can liquidate. Combined with a management buyout structure, we could raise enough to buy out the public shareholders at a fair price. Not Marcus's premium, but enough that they won't feel cheated. You'd be betting your entire personal fortune on Sterling, Margaret said. If it fails, then I lose everything. But if Marcus takes control, Sterling loses its soul. I'd rather own 100% of a smaller company than watch him gut what we've built. Thomas leaned forward. You're serious about this? Completely. Victoria's voice was steady. I built Sterling once. I can do it again, but this time it'll be fully mine. No hostile takeovers, no quarterly earnings pressure, no board members second-guessing every decision. She looked at each of them. Some of you can join the management buyout if you want. Buy in, become partners. Or you can take Marcus's offer and cash out. But I'm taking Sterling private, with or without you. The board members exchanged glances. Ethan watched the calculation happen in real time. Security versus risk, guaranteed money versus uncertain future. I'm in, Thomas said. 20 million. It's half my net worth, but I believe in what we're building. Margaret nodded slowly. 30 million. But I want equity protections. One by one, others committed. Not all of them. Richard and two others chose to cash out, take Marcus's money, and walk away. But enough stayed that the numbers started to work. Victoria called her lawyers, her accountants, her investment advisors. They worked through the night, building a structure that could work. By Monday morning, they had a proposal. By Monday afternoon, Marcus Hendricks heard about it. He called Victoria directly, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. You're bluffing. Nobody bets their entire fortune on a company. I just did. Check with your sources. Victoria's voice was ice-cold satisfaction. My offer goes to shareholders tomorrow. Fair value plus 10%. They can take your premium and sell to someone who'll destroy Sterling, or they can take my offer and know the company stays true to its mission. This is suicide. You'll be leveraged beyond recovery. That's my problem, not yours. Goodbye, Marcus. She hung up on him. Around the conference table, exhausted executives who'd worked 20 hours straight allowed themselves small smiles. He's going to counter, Richard warned. Raise his offer. Let him. The more he offers, the more desperate he looks. Victoria turned to her team. Get the proposal to every shareholder by tomorrow morning. Personal letters from me explaining the vision. Make them choose between quick money and lasting value. The next 72 hours were a blur of phone calls, negotiations, and watching stock tickers like they held the secrets of the universe. Shareholders had to decide, sell to Marcus at a huge premium or sell to Victoria at fair value and trust that she'd build something better. The responses came in slowly. Some went with Marcus. Institutional investors who couldn't justify turning down guaranteed profit. But others, particularly long-term shareholders who'd been with Sterling since the beginning, sided with Victoria. They believed in her vision enough to accept less money for the promise of something real. By Thursday afternoon, the tally was clear. Victoria had secured 53%. Sterling Global would go private under her leadership. Marcus's hostile takeover had failed. When Caroline delivered the news, Victoria's hands were shaking. Not from fear this time, but from the overwhelming reality of what she'd just done. She'd bet everything, her savings, her investments, her entire financial future, on a company that now belonged completely to her. Ethan found her in her office an hour later, staring at her computer screen like it might have answers. You did it, he said quietly. I'm either brilliant or insane. I haven't decided which. Can it be both? He moved behind her, hands on her shoulders. How do you feel? Terrified, exhilarated, poor. She laughed shakily. I own a company worth billions and I'm personally broke. That's a weird feeling. You're not poor, you have equity, which is worthless if Sterling fails. It won't fail. You won't let it. Ethan turned her chair so she faced him. But even if it did, you'd survive. You'd build something else. Because that's who you are. Victoria looked up at him, eyes bright with unshed tears. I couldn't have done this without you. Knowing you were here, knowing I had something real outside of work, that made it possible to risk everything on Sterling. Because even if I lost the company, I wouldn't lose you. You're never going to lose me. Ethan knelt down, eye level with her. I don't care if you're a CEO or unemployed, rich or broke, powerful or starting over. I love you. That doesn't change based on your net worth. I love you too. She pulled him into a kiss that tasted like relief and exhaustion and promise. And I'm done. I'm done sacrificing everything else for work. Sterling is private now, which means no more quarterly earnings pressure, no more hostile board members. I can run it the way I want, at the pace I want. What do you want? Balance. Time with you and Leo, Sundays off. A life that's about more than just work. Victoria smiled. You taught me that's possible. Now I actually get to live it. Starting when? Starting now. She closed her laptop with finality. It's Thursday afternoon. I'm taking the rest of the week off. Completely off. Who are you and what have you done with Victoria Lane? She's still here, just different. Better. Victoria stood, took his hand. Let's go home. Your place or mine? Ours. She paused. I was thinking my apartment is too big for one person, and your place is too small for three. Maybe we could find something in between. Together. Ethan's heart skipped. Are you asking me to move in with you? I'm asking us to build something that's actually ours. Not my space or your space, but our space. Where Leo has his own room and we have room for lazy Sundays, and it actually feels like a home. That's a big step. I'm aware. But I bet my entire fortune on Sterling. Betting on us seems significantly safer. Victoria smiled. What do you say? I say yes, absolutely yes. Ethan pulled her close. But we're getting a coffee maker you actually use. Deal. They left Sterling's offices hand in hand, walking out into a Thursday afternoon that felt like the first day of something new. The city stretched around them, indifferent to corporate drama and hostile takeovers, just continuing its endless rhythm. 4 months later, they moved into a 3-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood halfway between downtown and Leo's school. It had big windows and a kitchen they actually cooked in, and enough space for Leo's growing collection of dinosaurs and soccer trophies. Victoria hung the photo from Leo's game in the living room. Ethan filled the bookshelves with novels and Leo's homework and Victoria's business journals in comfortable chaos. Sterling Global thrived under private ownership. Without the pressure of quarterly earnings, Victoria restructured slowly and thoughtfully, investing in long-term growth over quick profits. The company was smaller, leaner, but more sustainable, more real. And Victoria learned to leave work at work. She made it to every one of Leo's soccer games. She learned to cook passable pasta. She bought plants for their apartment and only killed half of them. She built a life that existed outside of boardrooms and discovered that the world didn't collapse when she wasn't working 70 hours a week. Marcus Hendricks eventually moved on to other targets, other companies to acquire and control. They heard through industry channels that he'd successfully taken over a manufacturing firm in Ohio, installed himself as CEO, and was currently facing shareholder lawsuits over asset stripping. Victoria sent him a card that said simply, "Congratulations on your acquisition. Good luck with the litigation." She was learning to be petty in small, satisfying ways. One Saturday morning, 6 months after the takeover attempt, Ethan woke to find Victoria already up, standing in their kitchen making coffee. She wore his old college t-shirt and pajama pants, hair loose, no makeup, looking nothing like the CEO who'd built a billion-dollar empire. "What are you doing up?" he asked, moving to wrap his arms around her from behind. "Making breakfast. I thought I'd try those pancakes you're always talking about." "You hate cooking." "I hate doing it badly. I'm determined to become mediocre." She turned to kiss him. "Besides, Leo requested them. Who am I to refuse?" "You're getting soft." I prefer to think of it as becoming human. Victoria poured batter onto the griddle with intense concentration. How am I doing? Ask me when I taste them. They stood there in the morning light, Victoria making pancakes while Ethan set the table, and it was so profoundly normal that it took his breath away. This was the woman who'd straightened his tie months ago and asked why he was breathing funny, who'd offered him money to pretend to date her, who'd walked away from a fortune to choose him. And now she was here, in their kitchen, burning pancakes and not caring because this was their life, and it didn't have to be perfect. Leo wandered in, rubbing his eyes. Is Victoria making breakfast? Attempting to, Victoria corrected. The first batch might be inedible. Fair warning. That's okay, Dad burns stuff all the time. Thanks, buddy. Really supportive. They sat around the table eating slightly burnt pancakes, and Leo talked about his upcoming science fair project, and Victoria made suggestions that were way too complicated for a 9-year-old. But Leo loved anyway. Ethan watched them together, his son and the woman he loved, easy and comfortable, like they'd always been this way. Why are you smiling? Victoria asked, catching him watching. No reason? You're doing that thing where you get all sentimental and emotional. Can you blame me? Ethan gestured around their kitchen. A year ago, I was invisible. Now I'm here with you and Leo, eating burnt pancakes on a Saturday morning. It's a lot. Victoria reached across the table, took his hand. You were never invisible. I saw you. You saw a crooked tie. I saw someone worth noticing. The tie was just an excuse to get closer. Leo made a gagging sound. You guys are gross. You'll understand when you're older, Ethan said. I'm 9. I already understand. I just think it's gross. But Leo was smiling. After breakfast, they walked to the park. Victoria had learned to kick a soccer ball without falling over, though her form was still terrible. Leo ran circles around both of them, shouting instructions and laughing when Victoria's kicks went wildly off target. I'm never going to be good at this, she panted, chasing the ball. You don't have to be good at it. You just have to try. Ethan jogged beside her. That's what makes it fun. Fun is a generous word for athletic humiliation. You're doing great, and look how happy Leo is. Victoria glanced at his son, flushed and grinning, and her expression softened. Yeah, okay, that makes it worth it. They played until Leo got tired, then walked home slowly. Victoria's hand in Ethan's, Leo running ahead, pointing out dogs and interesting leaves. Just a normal Saturday. Just a family doing family things. At their building, they ran into Mrs. Chen, who'd become like a grandmother to Leo over the past year. Beautiful day, she said, smiling at the three of them. You look happy. We are, Victoria said, and it was true. Simple and true. That night, after Leo was asleep, Ethan and Victoria sat on their couch with glasses of wine, exhausted and content. Thank you, Victoria said quietly. For what? For bumping into me. For signing that insane contract. For staying when I pushed you away. For teaching me that there's more to life than quarterly reports. She turned to look at him. For loving me when I didn't think I deserved it. You always deserved it. You just didn't believe it yet. I believe it now. Victoria set down her wine glass, turned to face him fully. I have something for you. She pulled a small box from her pocket. Not a ring box, too big for that. Ethan opened it to find a key. What's this? Key to my office. Well, our office. I'm making you a partner, equal ownership in Sterling. Victoria spoke quickly, nervous. You've earned it. Your ideas have shaped our restructuring. Your perspective keeps me grounded, and I don't want Sterling to be just mine anymore. I want it to be ours. Ethan stared at the key. Victoria, I can't accept this. Sterling is yours. You built it. You risked everything for it. And now I'm choosing to share it with you, because that's what partnership means. She closed his fingers around the key. I spent 20 years thinking I had to do everything alone, that asking for help was weakness. You taught me that's wrong. The strongest thing I've ever done was letting you in. I don't know what to say. Say you'll take it. Say you'll build Sterling with me. Make it something we're both proud of. Victoria's eyes were bright. Say yes. Ethan pulled her close, kissed her forehead, breathed in the scent of her shampoo and the reality of this moment. Yes, he said. Always yes. They sat there in the quiet of their living room, holding each other while the city hummed beyond their windows. A year ago, a single touch had changed everything. A straightened tie, a question asked in a hallway. Two people who'd been invisible to each other suddenly, impossibly seeing, and now here they were. Not perfect, not without complications or challenges or moments of fear, but real, together, building a life that was messy and beautiful and theirs. Victoria fell asleep against his shoulder, her breathing slow and steady. Ethan held her, thinking about all the ways love could surprise you. How it could start as a transaction and become the truest thing you'd ever known. How it could ask you to risk everything and somehow make you braver instead of more afraid. In his room, Leo slept surrounded by dinosaurs and soccer medals and the confident peace of a child who knew he was loved. In their kitchen, dishes sat unwashed. They'd get to them tomorrow. In their living room, two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way held each other and breathed. Just breathed. Not with the panicked shortness of that first touch, but with the steady rhythm of people who'd finally found home. And if anyone had asked Ethan why he was breathing like that, slow and deep and grateful, he would have smiled and said the truth. Because I'm not afraid anymore. Because I chose love over safety, and it chose me back. Because this is real, and real is everything. The pancakes had been burnt. The soccer skills were still terrible. The future held no guarantees, but they were together, and that, Ethan had learned, was the only thing that truly mattered. Outside their window, the city kept moving. Inside their home, three hearts beat in quiet synchrony, a single father who'd stopped being invisible, a CEO who'd learned to be human, a boy who'd gained a family bigger than blood, no contracts, no performances, no pretending, just love. Messy and complicated and absolutely perfectly real. And somewhere in the margins of their story, between the crisis and the resolution, between the fake beginning and the genuine ending, was this truth. Sometimes the best things in life start as lies we tell ourselves about who we are and what we need. And sometimes, if we're brave enough to let them, those lies transform into truths we never knew we were searching for. Ethan looked at the key in his palm. Solid, real, a symbol of partnership and trust and futures built together. Then he looked at Victoria, peaceful in sleep, finally resting in a way she'd never allowed herself before. He thought about their journey from that hallway to this couch, from strangers to partners to something that defied easy definition. And he smiled. Because this was their story, not the one anyone had written for them, but the one they'd chosen to write together. A story that started with a crooked tie and a breathless question. A story that ended with three people breathing easy in the home they'd built. A story that proved, against all odds, that love was worth the risk. Every single time. The end.